Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Word Balloon. This is John Suntress. It's been a weird month, and I don't think I've been putting out as many episodes as I normally do. I will right the ship in the days and weeks ahead. I promise. Great guests on the way. I've already got some great shows in the can that I cannot wait to share with you right here on Word Balloon. Thanks a lot for coming here. Word Balloon is available on Spotify along with iTunes and pretty much everywhere else where you find podcasts, so keep that in mind. If you have questions or comments about the show, you can reach me via email, john@wordballoon.com. Make sure you follow me on Twitter under @JohnWordBalloon or under the Word Balloon Network at my name, John Suntress, on Facebook. Thanks again for listening, as always, and thank you very much for your patience with the commercials. It's one of the ways that keeps Word Balloon in the green, and I thank you very much for not fast-forwarding them and enjoying these spots. There might be one more commercial before we get started, but as always, I appreciate you listening. Thanks a lot. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Word Balloon, and welcome to the weekend. John Suntress here, really excited about today's episode. Tom King is back, The King's Speech. We'll be talking about his wrap-up to Batman. We previewed Batcat, Catwoman and Batman. Looking forward to that. And, of course, Strange Adventures, the new spin on Adam Strange that he's doing with Mitch Gerrits and also Doc Shaner. And really excited to talk to him about that. And he was kind enough to give me a preview of issue 1. Wow, it looks amazing. Absolutely. Fans of the Vision and also Mr. Miracle are going to be very happy with Strange Adventures. It has a great start. It's a good, solid first issue, but it asks a lot of interesting questions that will be explored in those 12 issues. And, like I said, we talk about Batcat as well. He'll be doing that with Clay Mann. He's got a secret project that he can't talk about. A little bit of information about the New Gods movie that he's still working on. And just a good, relaxing conversation that'll tide you over for the weekend. A great conversation with Tom King on today's Word Balloon. Brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners. As we close out the month, I thank you greatly, League, for your support, subscribing to me via Patreon. Like I always say, Word Balloon is free, but if you want to help out the cause and you like what I do here, patreon.com/wordballoon. Thank you greatly for your support, League of Word Balloon listeners. And Word Balloon is brought to you by Aftershock Comics. They got a great month coming up. You're going to see some amazing stuff in February, like John Layman's The Man Who Effed Up Time, and Zach Thompson's Undone by Blood and God Killers by Mark Sable, to go along with great books from Tim Seeley, Cullen Bunn, Paul Jenkins, Brian Azzarello, so many great writers over the years at Aftershocks, my buddy Phil Hester, and of course their current line like Baby Teeth with Donnie Cates, and Animosity from Marguerite Bennett, and A Walk Through Hell, and more projects from Garth Ennis. Unbelievable books, great genre-bending books that deserve your attention. Go to their website. You'll find full story descriptions, preview pages, and the diamond codes and how to get these books to your local shop at AftershockComics.com. All right, let's get into it now. A new conversation with Tom King, The King's Speech, on today's Word Balloon. He's back. It's time for The King's Speech. Tom King, welcome back to Word Balloon.
I am so excited to be here. I love listening to this show. I love being on it. Thank you for having me. It's
Are you
awesome.
kidding? You're always welcome. I felt like we'd done so much in the summer between our usual Skype conversations and then also at Terrificon, so I wanted to wait a while.
And then I was like, man, I got to get people to buy this comic. Can I talk on your audience?
I don't think so,
I need to sell
I don't think
copy.
so. I think, let's start with what's wrapped up, both Superman up in the sky and Batman. Let's start with Batman, though.
Can I first say what the worst thing about coming on Word Balloon is?
Please.
So I'll go on whatever it is the next day or whatever, and I'll be like, oh, a new Word Balloon's up, and I'll pull down my thing to update it, and it's fucking me.
I don't blame you.
And I'll be like, oh, I can learn nothing from this person. He has no wisdom to share with me.
Oh, man.
I do not want writing tips from Tom King. That guy fucks it up all day long.
I understand. Well, the good news is there's man, I was telling you, man, I'm trying to make up for lost time in January. I didn't release a lot of episodes. So really in the last 2 weeks I've done so many interviews and cranking them out before the 31st. And I have a feeling there'll be a companion Word Balloon, I think, to your release at the same time. So
Oh, that's mysterious.
There'll be something else. Well, we'll see. And I keep, like I told you, I keep digging in the archives because I think there's so many new listeners that haven't heard some of the old stuff. And even if you have heard it before, you might forget after 10 years. Oh, listen to Rucka talk about when he created Batwoman. That's interesting.
He'll be like, ladies and gentlemen, Bill Watterson and Tom King on this episode.
Oh, that'd be great. Oh, if only. If only. Or Gary Larson.
Or Gary Larson.
Or
First
Trudeau.
interview in 25 years, or Tom pitching Strange Adventures.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. This will be an archive. Remember when King did Adam Strange in Strange Adventures?
Oh, God, may we get that old. May we get that old.
Here, son. I'm with you, man. So, Batman. Great ending, man, and great final conflict. I mean, we should have seen it coming. I mean, we were expecting the Bane thing, and you did the switcheroo, and instead it's Thomas Wayne versus Bruce Wayne. Unbelievable.
Yeah, well, the whole thing was called City of Bane, but it wasn't necessarily about Bane the character. It was about sort of that emotion, that the idea of the bane of my existence, or the idea of deep anger and hatred, and so it turned into that sort of father story. Yeah,
and worst nightmare. I mean, it's. I always appreciate. It's so funny because again, one of my favorite things is to shit on Discovery, Star Trek Discovery.
I do know that. I've been on your podcast multiple times where you've. Well, I awkwardly stand here on the sides and be like, "Oh, okay."
But they really should kind of show Michael Burnham's pain with Michelle Yeoh's mirror doppelganger evil version, because. And that's what I'm saying about Batman is oh my God, can you imagine your worst nightmare where you finally feel like you can connect with your a version of your father, and instead it's literally the most traumatic, version of your father it could be, and even just staring at that face would it would freak me out.
Yeah, and for your father to come back and be like, I see what you've done with your life, Bruce.
And it's all wrong.
I don't approve.
Right. I mean, everything, yes, and really make you doubt yourself and push you to the limit physically in the desert and some of the other extremes that he put him through, but also, certainly mentally. I mean, and that's kind of what I think is missing from Discovery, where it's how come she's not shitting her pants over the fact that she keeps looking at her surrogate mother's face in a very, completely flying opposite of what, the woman tried to teach her and everything. And the same goes with Thomas and Bruce. I mean, it was crazy. And it was really just, in a good way, disturbing.
I'm glad you see that because when I first started on Batman in 2016, my number one thought going forward was, I want to respond to Discovery. I want this to be...
Even before it existed.
It did exist, but I was like...
Oh, did it really?
No, it didn't exist. But I was like, I bet people are thinking about this. And so I put it in... No. Can you imagine? The 85 issues, and it was just all screed against the TV show.
It's a Batman story, but it's really about Star Trek Discovery.
It's really about Star Trek.
You might notice.
What's the subtext of this thing? And I was like, the subtext is I had a really bad time watching this TV show.
Well, and... all right, now let's go over the kill list of who didn't survive City of Bane as a whole. So,
mostly just the butler, poor Alfred.
Yeah, poor Alfred, yeah. So, Did you get pushback from DC about, hey, I kind of want to... I mean, I think it is on the same level as ditching Clark Kent as Brian is doing. I mean, Alfred is, Bruce's father confessor and his father figure, and the one guy that can get in his face and go hey, you're fucking up.
I got the opposite of pushback. I got pushed forward, which was a shock. Which was an utter shocker to me. Or another shocker? That's not a real word. Another shock. I think mostly because they knew I was responding to Discovery, and so they I think that I sort of had this cliffhanger where Alfred at the end could perish. And I put it in the script, I was like, of course, we'll figure this out later that he's not dead. And DC's like, no, well, why is he not dead? And I was like, no, because he's Alfred and he has to live forever because he's a fantastic character. And they're like, no, he's dead.
Wow.
I feel like I'm speaking out of school. I never talked about this before, but I don't think it's a secret. I don't think it's. But sort of the idea, and I I was like, that's crazy. That's a crazy thought. And I'm not one to believe in comic book deaths. I don't. Do you believe in comic book deaths? I don't. I feel like I don't believe in them anymore.
Well, I know what you mean. How I accept them, and I'm really glad that we're talking about this for a second, because I think it is an interesting thing to kind of ponder. There is the school of, you're not fooling me. He's going to be back. He'll be back in a year and stuff. I get that, of course. Eventually, the reset button will be pushed. Even as Brian and I talked about Clark Kent, same thing. Eventually, but it's good to accept the story in the now. And I really think, like, when Hickman killed Johnny Storm in Fantastic Four, like, it gives you the opportunity to tell some really poignant stories. And really, two of my favorite moments from that, after Johnny was dead, was the Thing getting beat up by Thor, the Hulk, and I believe it was Hercules, or Doc Samson.
On the roof.
Yeah, and it ended, and it was totally silent, and it ended with the Thing crying in the Hulk's chest because he's so grief-stricken. And he just needed to blow off steam, and they knew it. And they're like, good, get it out of you and stuff. Great cathartic moment. Or Spider-Man on the ledge with Franklin, and he's like, I know how it feels to lose an uncle. It happened to me. And it's like, those are great moments. And, Heroes in Crisis had those kind of emotional moments, I think, as well, frankly. And, I mean, that's the thing. You need... So it's like, it's good to live in the moment of, oh, my God, I can't... and accept... Give you guys and women the chance to tell a dramatic moment. So that's how I feel about comic book deaths. It's like, all right, I'll accept it for the now.
No, it's an absolutely interesting philosophical conversation because, I mean, we all live in the shadow of Alan Moore saying, this is an imaginary story, but aren't they all?
Yep.
Right? Like, that was a one-sentence summary of all the confusion of comic books where it's like, yes, absolutely, like, every death is unreal. Every death can be undone by the next person. That's the magic of it. But if we acknowledge that, then we say these stories are sort of somehow fake and not real, and the emotion's not real, and it all sort of falls apart, and it's just ink on paper. So yes, you're absolutely right. It has to be real in the now, but still being, we're adults. We're not children. My children are children. We're different. And we can acknowledge that nothing is permanent in this comic book. In fact, that's what makes it wonderful, is that nothing is permanent. Someday some other writer and author will see a new vision of this and we'll put it together in a new way. What is real, I think, in comic books, what counts, what is continuity, what becomes real is what is good. So if Alfred being dead creates good stories, then Alfred will remain dead. If it creates bad stories, then Alfred will come back to life. I think that's true of most things.
I hear you, man. No, and the invention back in the Silver Age of bringing Alfred back as the outsider, I thought was, it's ridiculous in terms of the actual machinations and everything. But yeah, I mean, the outsider was a great character and it was such an interesting idea. And also, like, oh my God, it's Alfred? Holy shit.
That was going to be the twist the whole time. Like, this was just Fat Alfred and Skinny Alfred.
Fat Alfred. That's the white version of the Cosby Show.
No comment on that.
That's my comment. It's all right, but I like it. Fat Alfred. That's what stars should do for season 2 of Pennyworth. Fat Alfred.
No, but isn't that famous? He started out as fat and then he got thin and they had like a whole in-continuity explanation. I remember that. Every comic book's ever
that I don't remember in terms of that continuity explanation. During Infantino's run of Batman, and I don't remember who specifically might have been writing it then. I want to say Blockbuster.
Bob Kane wrote them all.
Of course he did. Yes, indeed.
Every single
right
one.
there.
His name is in it.
Of course, you're right.
John, you don't know anything about comics.
But he died during then, and they had this story of the outsider. But he was thin then. He wasn't heavy. I honestly do, as I understood it, Alfred became thin because of the movie serials.
Yes, I think that's correct. Yeah, they redid him for the movie serials.
Glenn Weldon, my NPR buddy, would know for a fact.
I know Glenn.
There you go. Absolutely. Good dude. Good man. I love Glenn.
Very buff these days.
He is very buff. It's insane. Seriously, absolutely, man. No, I'm very envious because he's doing middle age much better than I am. So he's a good man. Yeah. So I mean, we'll like you said, I guess we'll see. But I agree with you that it certainly is a new trauma for Bruce to deal with, not having Alfred around.
Yeah, and I think as we head towards issue 100 that James is doing, and sort of this, I feel like 5G is out there, right? Like people know it's sort of, I think it's the myth of it's coming.
Yeah, we know the timeline and everything, and I mean,
yes.
Dan did the big explanation of the timeline.
As we head sort of the big events that go forward, I think that being a huge trigger moment that sort of starts these events off is him losing Alfred, and I think that it'll play a huge. I mean, what an honor for me to get to write it, and but that moment of Batman sort of losing Alfred really was his connection to humanity in a lot of ways. It was his real father. I mean, that's how obviously my run ends with him saying that to Thomas, "You're not my father," and quoting Alfred as his father.
Yes. Yes.
So I think that will have repercussions, huge repercussions going forward.
Will it play in Bat-Cat as well?
It will. So Bat-Cat, I've written issue 4. Clay's drawing it.
Wow.
So I'm 4 in, and it's wonderful. Everything usually I'm writing stuff, and you're kind of writing on some level someone else's vision, just a little bit of it at least, if you're writing mainstream comics. And that's kind of the fun of mainstream comics, is taking someone else's vision and perfecting it into your way. I've gotten to a place where I'm writing 3 series that are more like Mr. Miracle and visions for my vision, for lack of a better pun, and Bat-Cat's part of that. And so it's hard to describe what Bat-Cat is without revealing all the things. We haven't done any teasers for it at all, except just like a few pieces of art. But it ties into that death, and it's about how that sort of death pushes the relationship of these characters. But it's a bigger story than that. It's about a 50-year relationship between Batman and Catwoman from the moment they met to the moment they die. And sort of what that relationship does to them over all these years. I mean, it's bigger than sort of one moment. It's about all these moments. It's huge.
Are you delving into future moments as well?
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be, if you've read my Batman Annual 2, which is the one which takes place in the past, it's their first kiss and their last kiss.
Yep.
Yes,
of course. Yes.
If anyone read that, with gorgeous art by Lee Weeks and Michael Lark. That is sort of the inspiration for the whole series.
Oh, so that's kind of like the bookends and everything. That's
the series takes off from there and takes. So if you liked that issue of Batman, you like that sort of tone of things and that sort of, being able to pull the camera back so far that you can see the whole lives, and then so close you can see one moment. That's what this series is about, and because Clay's drawing the whole thing, drawing every issue, so it's going to be a while, because he's the best artist. He's, in my opinion, the best artist in comics, and he's doing the best art of his life. So it's going to, you should see, I get in pages from him, like, Clay, you don't have to draw every book on the bookshelf.
Wow. Well, when I saw you guys at Terrificon, and he was selling prints of some of his best splash pages and panels and covers and things like that. No, I know what you mean. I mean, and yeah, I think he was doing the work of his life then. So that's great that he's pushing himself further. Wonderful.
Yeah, the Bat-Cat pages are even better, and because there's, it's my chance. I never got to do. I always felt almost guilty is not the right word, but in the rush of doing 85 issues double ship, I never got to do something as simple but as beautiful as something like Year One, which was 4 issues, or Dark Knight Returns, which was also 4 but oversized.
Yes.
Like something just like a perfect gem of a comic book, which I think DC does better than anyone. So that's what I'm trying to do with Bat-Cat. So it's like a totally different experience from the main series.
Well, it would that great romantic interlude, and I think it was 2 issues during your 85 issues and stuff. The rooftop, romance stuff. That's kind of the flavor of what this is going to be. So it's like a romance comic.
It's a romance comic, but it's also it's about. I mean, you'll see it. It's about the idea of this of Catwoman and how her relationship with Batman changed her, and how our relationships with people. Because Catwoman starts out. If you've read my run, if you read like Batman 49, which is Catwoman and Joker's having a conversation for a whole issue.
Yep.
Like, she started out as a bad guy. Like, she's literally a bad guy, right? Like, in the old Batman TV show, she's a bad guy. And then she met Batman, and she fell in love, and she became sort of this anti-hero. And that transition and sort of what she had done, what she's lived with, and whether that transition sort of sticks around and how that changes her character and how that changes her is what it's about. And it's also about how her coming to Batman with that changed him. So it's about sort of how when you couple with a person, that coupling in itself, almost like a Heisenbergian way, changes you, and you have to sort of find out if the new person you are is still compatible with the person you have chosen.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Deep.
So yeah, it's really
no, that's good.
I'm trying to make artsy fartsy comics.
But that's
when
honestly,
Tom Spurgeon died, I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna make some artsy fartsy comics.
But there are so few comic book relationships that you can or you should be able to do that every now and then. I mean, actually, there's several good, especially from the big two, where if you really wanted to, you could really have them sit down and have that kind of conversation. I remember in Infinite Crisis, one of my favorite moments was when the Golden Age Superman saw Earth 1 Batman. And he's like, Bruce, I know you don't know who I am, but you're the one man in the world I trust. And it's like, yeah, man, that's the legacy. That's the relationship, whether this universe accepts it or not. The Golden Age Superman and the reader, we know. And I mean, that's the thing. Like, we have as readers relationships with these characters, and we know how deep they can get. So that's good that you're given that opportunity to play in that world.
Well, I mean, that's what superhero comics can do, is they can...
Pardon Elizabeth Warren.
Whoa. Elizabeth Warren? You were sitting next to Elizabeth Warren this whole time, you didn't tell me? Did you hear my comments on Discovery? Did you think that joke was funny?
Did you see my photograph from the first day of the impeachment trial? And Chuck Schumer was speaking, and behind him there was a blonde lady with glasses, and it looked exactly like Katie Cook of IDW and My Little Pony fame. I mean, like, ridiculously, like, that's Earth 2 Katie Cook. I'm like, oh my God, what's Katie Cook doing in behind Chuck Schumer? And she's like, it does look like me. Anyway.
Katie Cook's the best. She gave a wonderful speech at the Ringo's 2 years ago, which I still think about webcomics.
Truly one of my favorite people in comics, and incredibly smart, and funny, and a hell of an artist. Yes. So anyway, but no, we were talking about deep relationships in.
And what comics can do? Comics can. There's superhero comics, especially. I work in the superhero genre almost primarily, except for Sheriff. And what they can do is they can amplify these emotions. That they it's almost like putting a microscope on humanity, because like all the traps of the capes and everything acts as a metaphor for these things. So yeah, when Golden Age Superman, when you have that moment where two people from different worlds are meeting, what you're thinking in your head is you're like, oh, this is like meeting an old friend, but the metaphor is right there, and it makes it larger for that. And that's what you can do with a Batman and a Catwoman. You can talk about sort of relationships, but instead of just being two boring people in a room talking, they can be on a rooftop and fighting, and you can make it much more visually interesting. And
sure.
And you can make the emotions much more strange, so that when someone says, I'm leaving you, instead of shutting the door, she jumps off a building. It's just more fun too.
That's true. That's a very good point. They do know how to make exits. That's true. That's very good.
Or when when it's like, I hate your old friends, like that's a common fight that married couple has. But with Catwoman, like her old friend is the Joker, so like that's true. That's like the hatred is so it amplifies it, and by amplifying it makes it more obvious and more interesting. I don't know. I love that. And, is
there a super villain? I mean, and again, you did have that great conversation with the Joker and Catwoman, but did she ever work with? I mean, I remember that one Silver Age cover of Poison Ivy and Catwoman and Batman like on his back, and like I don't know which one I want, and something to that effect that they were both, trying to seduce him. But and obviously you got the Harley and Ivy relationship. But yeah, does Catwoman have like a super villain buddy?
In my head, and I could be wrong about this, I swear to God, but in my head, like the DC universe that we're watching, we're like 3 years removed from the Super Friends cartoon of the 70s. Like that all took place. Like to me, or like the golden age and the silver. That's like that's the backbone. That's what they've already sort of been through, and now they're kind of living their lives having gone through that.
Sure.
So I think there was I just feel like there was a moment in Batman's life that was like Super Friends, where all his villains got together in the clubhouse and talked about it and laughed cacklingly and went off. Like in my, maybe it's just my own continuity, but I feel like that Silver Age, Golden Age stuff, those were Batman's first few years, and he kind of went through. So yeah, I in my head, I picture that at some point in her past, when she was a villain, there was some sort of villain club, like in like Brubaker's Criminal, where they all meet in a bar.
Sure.
Or the equivalent of the JLU cartoon Satellite, but for Batman.
Yeah, the Legion of Doom. Absolutely. Yeah. That meanwhile.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we were talking about this offline, but I mean, the wonderful thing about DC is that it had that comfortable sort of hugging quality to it. It has that sort of old school nostalgia.
We're all friends. We're all fighting the same common enemies.
That's right.
We've known each other forever. We are the original versions of the Justice Society are like at the very least, our uncles or older brothers and sisters, and eventually our uncles. And no, I agree, man. That is what makes the DC universe great, is the legacy and the connections to the origins and stuff. But yeah, like, are there specific, like, so you think everybody in the Legion of Doom was friends with Catwoman? I can kind of see her and Riddler possibly being friends.
I think they hung out. I don't think they liked each other.
They hung out.
But I think there was some commonality they ran into. It's not a very big city, Gotham. It's like
even Toyman, even thin Toyman, and Bizarro.
I feel like she was known in the villain community. I feel like if people had her number, you could text Catwoman. I think it was. Yeah. No, in my opinion, that's. I don't know, that's sort of the silliness of 50s and 60s DC as translated by sort of an Alex Tothian 70s vibe, and then perfected by Jose Garcia Lopez vision. Like, I feel like that did happen. Like, that happened in continuity, and they're all reacting to it. Like,
that's interesting. Well, yeah, but like I'm saying, like the Bruce Clark, or again, going back to your run and stuff. One of my favorite interludes was when they go to the fair. And they, wear each other's costumes and stuff and are hanging out. And obviously, Lois, those were great conversations with Lois and Selena. Those are fantastic conversations. Yeah, I just didn't know if there was a villain, counterpart, be it man or woman, that, and of course, and I'm always blanking on her name, the Catwoman's old confidant that walked over to Bane.
God, don't ask me.
Oh no, she's in that panel in 50.
From year one. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Hold on. The other day I was talking to Josh Williamson on my phone, who's like one of my best friends, and I forgot his name. And I was like, I have Alzheimer's. I'm talking to Josh on the phone. I could think of every single fact. I reach for a fact, and it's not there. It's just surrounded by globules of things. Yes, no, I know. Yeah, I wrote her 6 times. Was it Cassie? No, Cassie's somebody else.
No, not Cassie. Yeah. I was actually typing it out and seeing if I could find it.
People are screaming.
I was going to say, absolutely they are. I know. You idiots. I should be writing Batman. I know that.
Should be right that.
Anyway. Yeah, beyond her. And of course, she was a big character in Brubaker's Catwoman run as well, of course.
I know, and I did not do right by her. If I had more issues.
All right, I'm putting Catwoman's friend. It's got to be in there under.
You bullying me? That's not fair. You have a computer. I don't.
Oh, shut up. Who are Catwoman's friends? There's an article.
Oh, my goodness. This is fantastic radio here. I have to vamp for a second.
Who are Catwoman's friends? Come on.
Holly. Her name's Holly.
Holly, of course.
It came to me. My brain eventually.
Good Lord. I know. Shame on both of us. That's all right. But yeah, beyond Holly, and obviously, they had the pre-villain relationship when she was just a hooker. So.
We don't accept that. That's not part of the Super Friends continuity.
Yeah, wait a minute. Meanwhile, turning tricks on Neil Adams Avenue.
I want nothing to do with this conversation. Where's Elizabeth Warren? Can she get me out of this?
Anyway, I like it. But no, it's cool, and I am very excited for Batcat. I think that's going to be a lot. Now, what month does that start? April?
Oh, Lord knows. Lord knows.
For real? Have they not released a?
They have not released a date. We are. This is a new experiment to do a a book. Basically, what Clay came to us and said, "Look, this is going to go a little slow, but it's going to be the best thing you've ever seen." And when an artist says that to you, you say yes. It's kind of like if someone asks if you're a god, you say yes. So I said, "Yeah, Clay, take the time you need and get it done and do it well." So he's drawing it at the pace it takes to turn it into something that's like as good as Hush. I mean, that's the art level he's drawing.
That's the ambition. Excellent. That's great to hear.
I've never seen a guy kind of. I feel like some people come at Jim Lee. Jim Lee's been the best artist in comic for 30 years.
Sure.
Which is, I mean, that's just unprecedented and insane.
Agreed.
And I see Clay like reaching for that ring, and I was like, "Oh, you'll never do it." Like many men have tried, but he could do it. I have said I said this on another pod, but yeah, the alternate covers, or Jim's doing alternate covers on it, so you'll get a Jim Lee Catwoman Batman cover for every issue.
Very cool.
And Travis Claret,
oh sure,
is doing the other alternative cover. So there'll be 3 covers. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, that's great, and there's a great opportunity for a lot of romance-esque sort of covers, just like the Batman 50 issue and stuff.
Oh yeah, no, there'll be lots of kissing. I posted. I feel like I have done the most sex scenes in comics. Or like in kid comics. I mean, I know there's like Howard Chaykin has done only sex scenes in comics. great periods of his career. But I mean, awesome. in mainstream DC Comics, we were talking about Strange Adventures before, so they're previewing Strange Adventures. And we had the toughest time with it because on page, John, you've read it, don't tell anybody, but you've read it. And on page 4, there's a sex scene.
Yes.
Brief. And but in a preview, you can't have a sex scene because it'll go like in the back of, Scooby-Doo meets Batgirl.
That's true.
And so there was much consternation at DC about and I was like, just black it out and put 4 adults only. And they're like, no, you don't understand. You can't have a Scooby-Doo comic that says 4 adults only in it somewhere.
Right, yeah. So what'd they do?
So we decided, Mitch came up with the solution. Mitch Garrett's one of the 2 brilliant artists on that book, who's also the best artist in comics.
Yes.
And Mitch came up with the solution that we're just kind of subtly skipping that page. Because if you read past it,
that's cool. Yeah.
You don't really need to read that page. It's more of an atmosphere than anything else. So
understood. Yeah.
You're getting like the first 6, but you're missing 1, so it's like 5. And then when you read the actual book, you'd be like, wow, I don't remember this beautiful sex scene.
No, it's well, you've started, so we may as well transition to Strange Adventures.
One topic to another. I'm not helping at all.
Now this is good. Thank you very much for letting me see it. I'm blown away, and would say, without spoiling anything, if you enjoyed, Mr. Miracle, and if you enjoyed Vision, and it's a very different story from those 2 things, but it will provoke you in the same interesting way where you'll be like, oh, this is what's going on here. Let me learn more. And I think it exposes a lot of questions, and even with these solicitations and showing, the cover that you showed, that is the idealized classic Flash Gordon looking Adam Strange, to the ones that have the graffiti on them and stuff, and that kind of suggests that maybe the PR isn't really the real story. So people are aware of that flavor to the book. That's fair to say. Yeah.
I mean, the book is about the distinction between an ideal and the truth, right? Like, that's what the whole book is about. And so for us, we started with Strange, him being this Flash Gordon-esque figure, which of course is stolen sort of from the Tarzan turn of the century Buck Rogers kind of things.
Sure.
Which, of course, is just an idealization of colonialism. It's all about that sort of second son who goes off to India and learns how to, and somehow finds himself and conquers the land and meets the pretty girl. And it's an utter idealization of colonialism, which, of course, colonialism is. I did so much research for this book. I read so many comic books, wonderful comics. And they're the best run comic books in the world are, those old Alex Raymond books.
Oh, sure. Yes.
And Al Williams and Al
Williamson, and even Mac Rayboy. I don't know if the strips and everything that Mac Rayboy did too, man. Oh no, great stuff. And yeah, I mean, good Lord, yeah, Williamson stuff. I have those oversized books. You know, not only the King comic, you know, the brief run of 5 issues or whatever, but even like he did like Flash Gordon was like tied to like a heating and air cooling company in some way, and he would do these great big giant ads and stuff, or like, you know, like 1-page strips, and did all these beautiful Flash Gordon like mini adventures and stuff. I don't know, great stuff.
Al Williamson is in my top 5 comic book artists of all time. I have a page of his up on my wall, which I paid so much money for. Oh my God,
that's cool. I don't blame you.
My wife is. I got a page from. From an old Weird Science that he did.
Oh, fantastic! Oh, that's amazing.
From the early 50s.
But yeah, no, I'm a massive Adam Strange fan, and it's
You're
so
a massive.
funny.
I knew there was one out there, and I knew I'd find you.
Oh, come on! There's got to be more than just me. Although it was funny, in anticipation of your run, I did go on eBay and bought a bunch of Bronze and Silver Age Adam Strange, like late 60s, early 70s, and a lot of them are Joe Kubert covers. And they're great. They're fantastic.
So that was the second, not the Carmine covers then.
No, they aren't the Carmines, unfortunately. No, these were Kubert covers and stuff. Yeah, of Strange Adventures. And like 15-cent era, 20-cent era.
Yeah. He moved. He obviously. So this is nerd history, but oddly enough, Adam Strange wasn't actually in Strange Adventures. He was in Mystery in Space.
That's right, of course. Yes.
And Captain Comet was in. His sort of partner in crime, or not partner in crime, but sort of his reflection in the other book. So yeah, just to make it, but eventually he moved over to Strange Adventures when you got those Joe Kubert covers. See, this I can remember, but I can't remember fucking Holly's name. My brain is useless.
Every now and then I run into great like runs of reader comics that are reasonably priced, and I will go nuts. Like I bought a couple Nick Cardy Aquaman covers.
Oh my goodness!
And I'm so glad, again, just the comics and stuff. And I mean, I'm that's fine. That's enough. I mean, good Lord. I mean, yeah. So I mean, that's the thing. And like you said, Carmine's stuff back, and Murphy Anderson, of course, another amazing Adam Strange artist and stuff. Good stuff, man.
People complain about the covers today, and like that we do multiple copies of things to boost up sales, which we do, obviously. But DC was running the biggest scam ever in the 70s. Their covers were so gorgeous.
Yeah.
These Kaluta covers and these Hardy covers and these Infantino. You go through old boxes of the early Bronze Age and you're like, I cannot believe these guys were producing gorgeous art on every cover. And then you open them up and you're like, oh.
Yeah. It wasn't the same guy. Yeah, no, you're right about that.
It was not the same guy. It was that's like, oh, here's the stuff that was done on Deadline with the sort of generic plot.
That's true.
And I mean, and there's night. I mean, they're calm and they're warm and they're like, you look at the front, you're like, this, every single cover should be in a museum, and you open the inside, you're like, oh, this is just a comic book.
Yeah, no, you're right, and especially too, not only the superhero ones, but really like the westerns and the war comics. And that's what I was going to say. I found this treasure trove of 10-cent Sergeant Rocks, and these. I mean, and in that case. Yeah, and in that case, Kubert was doing the interiors a lot of the time as well.
Or Russ Heath. You're like, oh, Kubert's not available.
Russ Heath, exactly. Yes, man. Good Lord. But these covers were just so beautiful, and they are these. And I actually, the last time Joe Kubert was in Chicago for C2E2, I got him to autograph a bunch of them. And, it was great. And I'm just like, oh, thank you. I'm like, they're gorgeous, and they deserve your name on them. I'm not a... oh no, that's going to devalue it. I'm like, I don't care. That's the guy who drew the goddamn thing. I want proof it's that guy. So.
I've signed enough comic books that I hope there's more of you out there. I've seen my signature on 9.8, so I know it can't take that much away, which boggles me because my signature is terrible.
What about your when you draw? And you draw your like great looking, your hurting Batman, as Art Balthazar would call it. He's hurting.
I'm the worst artist in the world.
But they're funny. Like, have you ever seen any of if you draw on a comic, if it's graded and everything?
I have seen my art on a comic book that's graded and with like a 9.8, and I was like, they must be teasing you. This is a mocking. Like, there's no way you can just get 0.2 off for horribly ugly art. It should say that like you got
HUA here. It's a horribly ugly art. You've got that's an automatic 5.
But your stuff is distinctive, and it is you, and you did write the comics, so it is like, hey, and not only do you get, Clay's art, but you got...
And I have done interior artwork on a comic book, on Mr. Miracle. I did a whole page. So I'm legit. Yeah, so as much as Hitchcock is an actor, I'm an artist. I've appeared.
All right, let's because we can talk about this in general because they're characters in the book, and I'm not going to go into what they're doing in the book. But how do you say Adam Strange's wife's name? Alana?
I say Alana.
Okay, good. Because I wasn't sure if it was Alana or Alana. I mean, I don't know why, but you figure it's an alien name.
Yeah, I figure it's but I don't know. I'm sure that's how Carmine pronounced it. I'm sure it was Alana.
There's also and it's meta. But there, much like in Mr. Miracle, when you had Kirby text, can I say that about that?
Oh yeah.
And you've got this great little moment where you quote Carmine.
Yeah. So what we're doing. So here's a semi spoiler, but you guys should all get the book. The orders have come out, but so all 3 of the books I'm going to do. Sort of the Batcat. Strange Adventures in the mystery book that I'm working on that hasn't been announced yet, but you know what it is, so shut up.
Okay.
They're all on some level they're all about murder mysteries. They're all mysteries. They're all sort of noirish in that way. They're about sort of fate and shame. I took a whole year to research noir. I know we talked about this before, where I just watched noir movies for a whole year, and I was like, I can't. I don't know what influence is happening on me. I mean, you should be able to write noir Batman. He's the most noirish of all characters, right?
Sure, you would think. Yeah.
But you can't quite get at... Because what the revelation was in watching all these movies is that noir is not about sort of the detective sitting in his room with the shades half drawn and the pretty girl comes in and then he solves the mystery. That's like 2% of noirs are actually like that, but just the public imagination has projected them to be like 100%.
Yeah, Maltese Falcon. Yeah,
sort of
Marlowe.
Yeah, Philip Marlowe, but or The Big Sleep. I think that's like but like even I don't The Big Sleep. I don't even consider that to be a noir. It's like Eddie Miller says this, but it's more like a comedy. It's
absolutely. I do love and of course it makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, it makes no.
I love that story about it where they apparently contacted Raymond Chandler as they were making the movie, for Word Balloon listeners who don't know. And are like, we're a little confused about the story. How about, why does X and Y happen? How do you get to Z? And even Raymond Chandler's like, I don't know. I have no idea. Look, it's on my shelf, okay? I made $1 million bucks off this book. Leave me alone.
I am drunk off my ass right now.
Exactly. Leave me alone. I got to deal with Billy Wilder. He wants me to get back to writing our script and everything, so...
That's how long it takes to get to old movies, guys. But the revelation in watching all these is that what it's actually about is it's about guilt and fate. It's about someone who does something wrong.
Yep.
And then
pay for it.
And they pay for it. And of course that's a product of the production code at the time, because movies, if you did something wrong, you had to be punished by the end. That was the actual rules of making movies back then.
That's right.
But that projected this because of that rule. It literally meant that God was like available here. There was an actual sort of punishing, like the kindly ones. There was a fate waiting for everyone, and it was the production code. But in the story, it had to happen. So it's all about sort of people who feel guilty about something and slowly succumbing to the fate of that guilt. And that's hard to put in a Batman thing because he never succumbs to the fate of his guilt. He never paid. A lot of noir is about paying for your crimes.
Right.
And so I was like, this is not having any, I was like, I'm wasting my time. I'm watching all these noirs. I'm getting nothing out of it. And then I started writing these sort of 3 different series, and I was like, oh my God, they're all about that. Each one of them is about sort of this hand of fate and guilt. And of course, noir being a genre of the 50s, that was about a whole generation of men returning from World War II who had done some terrible shit to save the world.
Yep.
And having to sort of come back into real life and that transition. Like, that was the actual undercurrent of the whole thing. What it meant to be a generation at war, and then to try for that same generation to try to make peace. And I feel some of that, like, because I feel like my generation was a generation of war, and now we're sort of trying to make peace, and it's sort of this sheer fucked up world we live in now. And so then, like, as I was writing, I was like, so all three of these are sort of starting to talk to each other, and it's sort of becoming a trilogy of books that sort of are all about these sort of dark things. This is a long way to say this, but you asked me one little question about Carmen Infantino.
No, I like all this. Go on.
So all three of these books are sort of going to be about that, about fate and about murder and about mystery and about solving a murder mystery, in that context of, fate and guilt. And that's one aspect they'll all share. Another aspect they'll all share is that they'll be talking to the medium himself. They'll be talking about comics. Comics will be a central part of it. Because while I've been sort of searching, because I feel like I wrote enough about sort of, my Iraq experience for a long time. Then I wrote a lot about being, having anxiety. I wrote enough about that, didn't I? Yeah. So now I'm looking for new themes. And they're going to be, and I'm obsessed, obviously, with comic book history and sort of that reflection. So all these books are going to reflect themselves, and they're going to exist, and they're going to comment on comic book history. And one of the ways that works is in Strange Adventures, is that it has sort of that Watchmen-esque quote at the end, where it ends with a quote, which I copied straight up in Omega Men. Hardcover out soon. Buy 2 copies.
Fantastic, man. That's great. That is your, like, secret weapon that now people can go back and go, okay, I know you ignored it the first time around. Have you read Omega? It's like, if you like what I do, I did it first here. Check it out, man.
The lowest selling book at DC and Marvel. It was the least selling.
But look at this, and now it's getting a hardcover and everything. Hey, man, that's sometimes that happens with certain books, man. That's your Eddie and the Cruisers, if you want to put it in movie terms. I don't know if you knew that. Eddie and the Cruisers did not do well at the box office at all, but people discovered it on HBO and VHS and everything, and then it became like this thing, and it got it to the point where the poor man's Bruce Springsteen band, John Cafferty and Beaver Brown, actually had a hit with the song from the movie.
Hey, It's a Wonderful Life, Citizen Kane.
That's right. Yes.
Movies.
Yeah, Citizen Kane, I think, it was because, obviously it was lauded by the critics and stuff, and that was really Hearst just kind of putting his thumb on the scale and going, not in my theaters.
That's true.
Not in my towns.
That's what happened to Omega Men, too. It was...
Absolutely.
It was Axel Marvel's like, nah! That Tigor's based on me! Joe Quesada's like, I can tell Brute is me. Omega Men. I put in my bio, I always put New York Times bestselling author Tom King, which is ridiculous. But the reason I'm on there is not for Batman, which sold a ton, but I'm on there for Omega Men because that came out before they canceled that list. They brought it back since, but they still had graphic novels as a separate category, and Omega Men made the list. So I always think I'm on the New York Times bestseller list for my lowest selling book.
That's crazy. Yeah.
So go back to Strange Adventures ends with a Black Watchman-esque quote, but instead of being a quote from like he has Rilke and Bob Dylan and all those, it's a quote from a comic artist of the Silver Age, and because I have billions of old comic magazines, old comics journals and such, where I have all these old these sort of interviews that haven't been published for a while, and I sort of scan them for them to say something that's meaningful and deep to me, and that relates to the story. So it's almost like I'm trying to bring back that spirit of how much energy these sort of Silver Age artists put into these books and how important it is to me, and it all works together, hopefully.
Well, I understood, and I really think that era too can be misunderstood if you don't have those comics interviews and Amazing Heroes and Alter Ego and some of these older publications, not only the Tomorrow's books, but Comics Journal and things. And thank God they were talking to those guys. And I think a lot of times those guys, you miss some of the profound things they say, but you also get the character too of that these are working class artists that really were like grinding them out for deadlines, but by the same token, did have deep thoughts about some of the stuff they created.
Absolutely. And it's both those things, and both those things are noble. These are guys who just had to pay the bills, and there are guys that had to pay the bills through making art, and I created a sort of tension within them, which made the stuff great. That you could do that. And of course, like I said, Strange Adventures is about an idealization versus reality.
Yep.
And I have two artists working on the book, or two artists telling the story of the book who are telling with me. Mitch Gerrits, who draws sort of the reality portions of it, because nobody draws the grounded comic books better than Mitch in the whole world. And then Doc Shaner, who's drawing the idealized versions. And Doc and I have worked together before in the Green Lantern thing, Doc draws the dream of comics, you know? He draws, if you close your eyes and think about what comic books look like, I feel like you see Doc Shaner's vision in your head.
Absolutely. No, his stuff is beautiful. His stuff is unbelievable. And he's driving me crazy because we've spoken on direct messages for years. And eventually he will come on Word Balloon, I'm sure.
Come on, it's a time sure.
But I've loved his art forever. And I mean, nobody draws the Marvel family, the Shazam family, the way that Evan does. I mean, it's so perfect, and it evokes C.C. Beck at his best, and Paul Kupperberg, and some of the other great Shazam artists of the old days and stuff. And it's just clean and beautiful. The stuff he did on Future Quest with Jeff Parker and stuff, all that stuff. I mean, again, can evoke the spirit of Toth, but definitely his own style. But I find it interesting in Strange Adventures. And I don't know if this was through the coloring or whatever, but I expected more of a contrast between Mitch and Evan.
Well, they're both coloring themselves.
Interesting.
They're both.
Okay.
That's why the credits are very, because so we have two different artists, but they're both doing colors, inks, and pencils all to themselves. So it's very much their vision of what the art should be.
But yeah, I mean, honestly, and again, I don't think I don't say that as a knock, or I just found it interesting. I'm like, these blend a lot more, which is good, because there should be kind of a blurred line between the idealized thing and the truth, as opposed to it being so black and white, or as clean.
Don't
clean
give away the ending.
Yeah, it isn't anything. I don't think.
No. The ending of the whole 12-issue series.
Oh, I see. Is it 12? It's going to be 12.
Fantasy blend, they're all 12. All three of these sort of things I'm working on now are all 12-issue minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. They're
the first book, 28 pages. Are they all going to be oversized?
All 28 pages, yeah. They're all over.
Great. That's cool.
Yeah, and Batcat is 22, and the other project is 22. So.
Okay. I'm so glad we're back to 22 pages.
Well, these are sort of special books, so they get to be
okay.
Yeah, it's so 22 pages is it's much, much better.
Yeah. I mean, you really do miss those 2 pages when it was down to 20 in some cases and stuff. And God, I have my Marvel Unlimited on count. I know Sacrilege just mentioned it in a DC interview.
I did some Marvel. They're making a TV show based on one of the Marvel things I did.
This is very true. I was rereading the original run of What If.
Oh, so good.
And they're 30-page stories.
I just reread the What If the Gil Kane Iron Man, where he has all the different uniforms.
Yes, because the big guns of the Avengers leave, so it's him, Giant Man, and the Wasp.
That's right,
and he builds them armor, and so the Wasp has tiny armor, and Giant Man has gigantic armor. Oh, it's a great story, and beautifully so great Gil Kane stuff.
Klaus Janson was the inker on that, which is insane, because I did an issue of Batman that Klaus Janson inked, so that made me feel very cool. I don't know
who did the pencils on that one.
JR did the pencil.
Oh, that's great. Johnny and Klaus are always good together. Absolutely, that's great.
And so I was like, I have this guy's email address, and here's this comic from the early 70s. It's brilliant. Yeah,
that's cool. I finally met him at my last New York show.
Super.
And ridiculously nice. Yes, he'll eventually we'll get him. I'm very excited. I was telling you off the air, one of his contemporaries called me out of the blue this afternoon. That'll be my secret for a Word Balloon until it happens.
Ooh.
But if everything connects and everything, we'll have him on. Well, when it's announced, you'll know. You'll remember when you saw it. You go, oh yeah, John told me he talked to him that day. So
I get it. I'm your second choice. Just because Omega Man didn't sell enough.
Exactly.
I don't hate Star Trek Discovery at the correct level to hate it. I get it.
Hilarious. No, man, it's Strange Adventures. It's a great start. All right, so we got Alana.
We have 7 minutes till midnight. Are we going to stop this podcast and just watch Picard while we?
Oh, is it dropping in midnight?
I don't know. It's dropping tomorrow, right? Today's the day?
Yeah, it's dropping Thursday. Discovery always ran at like 7 o'clock on Thursday night. Oh. It's funny because Rob Burnett was saying the same thing. He was wondering if it was going to drop at midnight or not.
Oh, see, I don't know. I've had a subscription to this goddamn service for 2 years just for this moment. So
I know it's like seriously, it's like waiting for Christmas. I know. Isn't that hilarious? Now I got to confess. Good tangent. Let's hold on this for a second.
That's not a tangent? Well, I guess it's the first time.
A little bit. But, I mean, we did talk Discovery earlier. But a break from our Strange Adventures talk. I did not have this kind of anticipation for Rise of Skywalker like I do for Picard. I admit it freely. I was, and don't get me wrong, I was absolutely like, oh yeah, I'll see the Star Wars movie, and I'll see it, I won't see it like first day. Well, with Picard, literally, ever since last week, I'm like, oh my God, it's almost time. I can't believe it's a week away. This is fantastic.
Yeah, I'm the same. When I saw the post, I tweeted about this. I feel bad repeating it. When I saw the poster, and it was about an old dude coming back for one last mission. My favorite of all plots. Oh sure. My God! I just want to write old man every single character. If I could do old man Kite Man and old man,
that's true.
I do it over and over again. And it's Star Trek and Picard, the best I think actor who's ever been on the show. Just in terms of his ability.
No, I agree.
And just to cap off, he has a dog. He has a pit bull. If you want to go on my Twitter feed, I have a little pit dog, and she's the love. She's just the half of my heart. And so I was like, oh my God, these are the three things I love most in the world. I guess I throw my children as number 4. And so I was like, I can't believe this is an actual show. What if it? I get that. What was that? A movie with the geeks who rode across the country to see Star Wars 1 and then.
Oh yeah. Dan, what's his face was in that from Balls of Fury and everything.
Yeah, like the nerd
and Kristen Bell.
Yes, and then at the very last line is they're saying like, "What if it sucks?" Like, what if it sucks? Oh no!
Isn't it Fanboys? I think it is Fanboys. Yeah. I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure it's Fanboys. Yeah. That's funny.
But
good stuff. No, I feel the same way, man. But back to Strange Adventures. And again, I promise nothing about the story. But I just want to get everyone's name right. Zeradoth or Zeradoth.
I say Zeradoth or Zardoth. I say
Zardoth.
Maybe I skipped the middle name. I don't know. Sorry, Zardoth.
I'm gonna have to again. You see, I'm gonna have to reread it.
So I feel like people don't know what Strange Adventures is. Should I explain to them what Adam Strange?
You want, yeah,
no. But just who Adam Strange is as a historical character, because he's such a weird character. I mean, it's been announced.
I mean, we know him, but yeah, no, you're right about that. Shame on me. We should go into his history and everything because it's a great idea. A twist on. What could be just very bland poor man's Flash Gordon and stuff, but it's much different.
John, it is so poor man's Flash Gordon. You can't deny it.
No, but the conceit of how he gets there and everything, and I love all that stuff. Go on.
I love it too. I adore it, but it can stick. Hey, know, NSYNC came after Backstreet Boys. They're still good. No.
Adam Strange is the NSYNC to Flash Gordon's Backstreet Boys. That's fantastic.
That's the example I always give my wife when I think I'm copying somebody. I'm like, I'll be the NSYNC as Backstreet Boys. My wife's like, they're both terrible. I don't understand.
Exactly.
Now I buy going through my head.
The origin of Adam.
The origin of Adam Strange. So Adam Strange he's of course an archaeologist, because who isn't? And he's in South America, and he discovers the Zeta beam. Is like this beam that kind of pulses to Earth every once in a while, and if you're in the right place at the right time, you can get absorbed into it, and you'll disappear from Earth and pulse back on a planet called Ran, which is 25 trillion miles away, which is actually not that far for a planet, but it's like 3.5 light years or something. Watch that math is completely wrong, but it's in my head. And so and he goes there and he finds there. Classically, the princess of the land, who's the daughter of the, classic. He's both the president and the chief scientist. He's basically Superman's dad, Zardoth, and he falls in love. But he has the beam energy in him, and periodically, because this is all little shitty 50s science. The Zeta beam wears off, and he fades back, and he has to go to Earth, where he's just a boring archaeologist again.
and then he has to wait for the next Zeta beam so he can go become a prince of this other land.
And it's always in the southern hemisphere.
And it's always in the southern hemisphere.
So yeah, he's literally has to be either in South America or Australia or whatever.
Yes, there's a great Alan Moore Swamp Thing, which I have a page up on my wall. Rick Veach did it, where he's in Australia and he's racing and he's going to like a very rural area of Australia. He thinks he's just going to jump off a rock, and they built a mall there. And he figures out the Zeta beam is about to hit one of the bathrooms in the mall, so he goes in and it's in like the third stall, and he opens the stall and there's someone taking his shit, and he has to pull the guy out of his shit and sit down so the Zeta beam can hit him while he's on the shitter. And that's why Alan Moore is the greatest writer in history of comics.
It's a Swamp Thing Adam Strange story. It's part of his Swamp Thing run, and thematically, there are a little bit of a similarity between your story and Alan's. I mean, I'll leave it at that. I mean, you don't have to comment or whatever, but that was my my casual observation.
For sure. If you're looking for a great... the best Adam Strange stories are, of course, the classic one, the 50s, the Carmine and Fantino Gardner-Fox ones. But they're the same story over and over again.
Yeah, they're morality plays. They are the sanitized Flash Gordon. They're the ideal that you're showing in your book.
It's an absolute ideal. He goes and there's some weird alien threat that's about to take over Ran, and he finds out some scientific way to discover. The thing that's most radical about it is that Alana is very much his equal in these old worlds. She has a jetpack, she has a gun, she's just as cool as him. It's not sort of a like the early Stan Lee stuff where every single woman is just in love with the guy, and kind of like Alana is actually a fairly cool, strong character. And those it's for the I guess it's late 50s.
Yeah.
And
there was a time. Oh no, continue if you have more to say about his the tropes. I mean, he's got that classically great Silver Age outfit with the fin on his head.
Oh, so good.
Of course the jetpack. As I always say, man, growing up in the 70s and having watched films from the 60s and 70s, I thought for sure at this age we'd all be flying around with jetpacks. I truly believe that, because they were at every halftime of college football and pro games, and they're in Thunderball, the James Bond movie, so the technology existed. And I'm like, well, I'm sure by the 50s they'll have figured it out, and we'll all be flying around on jetpacks. Or my 50s.
And instead we got
Ain't
Twitter.
happening.
Yeah, no jetpacks, but we got little people yelling at each other.
We got supercomputers in our pocket, which is fantastic. I'm thrilled that I have the back computer, and I can look up any. Truly, that's it. To me, every iPhone is basically the back computer in your pocket.
It's a mother box, as we didn't.
It is a mother. That's true too. It is a mother box. I do like people that refer to it as the mother box. But yeah, so those are all the great things about Adam Strange.
So
I was going to ask, as you mentioned how Alana is kind of his equal and stuff. I think it was the Kuberts when they were doing Adam Strange back in the 80s or whatever.
Yeah.
There was almost a take on Rand's civilization having all this technology, and you've got the Zardoths and everything, but that maybe the people kind of forgot how to use their technology. And
yeah, that was I can't remember. That was in the post-Watchmen era when everyone's getting a dark story. And look, Lord knows I love getting dark. And the art in that is gorgeous. Some of the best arts. It's young Andy being inked by Adam, and it is beyond beautiful. The story is terrible.
Well, I was wondering.
Adam cheats on Alana halfway through, and it's kind of like
yes.
It's very pro the cheating. It's not like, oh my god, he's making a mistake. It's like, he definitely should cheat. It's not a. And Adam comes across as not like a complicated bad guy, but as a guy who you just don't like.
That's fair. No, I understand.
Oh my god, I'm gonna find out who's written. But it's like, oh yeah, it was written by Josh Williamson. Like, no, Josh. I can't do it. It's the writer of this. Oh crap.
Who wrote it?
I can't remember. Some guy who. I forget.
Yeah, because I remember. I mean, good lord.
It's when everyone was doing dark and deep comics about it.
Adam and Andy. they drew the hell out of the book. It's great.
It could not look. Well, if you look at, I just did Superman Up in the Sky with Andy, which was
I know. Yeah, I was going to say we could transition into that. Sure.
Best comic book experience. I'll never get that again.
It was so much fun, and that's going to just like, and truly, I feel the same way about Brian and Nick's Batman as well.
Love that.
Really fun. Those are fun
Nick's
evergreen books. Those are really fun evergreen books.
I love Brian. That was my favorite Batman book of the last year, and I wrote a few Batman books last year. So I love that Brian book.
But also, isn't it interesting that because Clark's really not in your book that much,
Clark,
if at all, Kent.
No, Clark makes an appearance. I have a whole issue with Clark and Superman yelling at each other. And
I forgot about that. Shame on me.
See, I did some Clark stuff.
But I was going to say, because it is so much of it is out in outer space and everything, that it's like you're almost even making that, not an argument, but like, you could tell great Superman stories, and it doesn't have to be. I mean, I know he was checking in with Lois, which was awesome, and Lois is at the planet, and I loved when he made his interplanetary phone call to Lois and everything. I thought that was terrific. But that's the thing. I like, as much as, and I really do, I love the whole conceit of Metropolis and the Daily Planet and all of that. And those were my devil's advocate arguments to Brian when he's like, hey, this is what I'm doing. And I'm like, do you want to do that? Do you want to get rid of all that? That's really good. But by the same token, I do like when Superman is a citizen of the universe and just running around and meeting, different aliens, and also isn't always the strongest guy in the room and everything, which is a good thing. But also just encountering these alien cultures, I think is fantastic. I always love that stuff.
I mean, I love the science fiction aspect of Superman. I think that's, I dig that. I dig his jumping from planet to planet, and yeah, I've always liked. I mean, he came out of the sci-fi pulps. That's what sort of Siegel and Schuster were obsessed with. So I feel like. I don't like him as a guy solving crimes in Metropolis. I like him as sort of a bigger than life, fighting huge robots kind of guy.
I understand. It's funny because I guess growing up with the George Reeves show as I did, I mean, really was as much part of my young childhood as the comics were. Too. So I mean, but I do because that is the one thing about that. No, Superman isn't Batman, but he is an investigative reporter, and it's like he's a detective in his own way. And I always loved that, and I really loved how strong Clark is in the George Reeves show, and that he's not a milksop, and he gets in the police's face when they're holding out information and stuff. Or my favorite thing that I always like to point out, when Lois and Jimmy are in trouble, they always say, "I wish Mr. Kent were here. He'd know what to do." More so than, God, I wish Superman would save us right now. So, I love that,
Well, I think maybe I'm speaking also as a writer who was writing Batman for 4 years of his life.
Sure.
Where it's like, Batman, you start on a page and you're like, okay, where is Batman in this page? He's like, okay, he's on a rooftop, or he's in an alley, or he's on the docks. Like, you run out so quickly.
Oh, yeah.
So when you're like, Superman's flying in space, like, where's Superman? I was like, oh my God, I could choose any planet. I could choose a star. He could be riding on a comet. He could be, there's this sort of infinite world out there. And it was very free. And that comic was such a freeing comic because it was like we had no limits because nobody cared about sales because we only at Walmart. And so I was just like type of Andy was like, what do you want to do? And he'd be like, well, let's just let's do a Flash race. I was like, all right, good, Flash Superman race. And then Andy's like, I want to do Sergeant Rock for my dad. And I was like, yeah, we'll do a Sergeant Rock issue. He's like,
that was outstanding.
It's like, we're in space. How are we going to do a Sergeant Rock issue? I was like, we'll figure it out. It's comics.
That's exactly. And and you're right. And it was that zipping around like that from format to format or genre to genre and everything. No, it was great. Oh, absolutely. And the Sergeant Rock one was outstanding. Good Lord.
Yeah, so that was the most fun. It was just pure fun comics.
Is the full 12 parts collected in one graphic novel?
Yeah, so both Brian and Nick Darrington and Andy and Maya are coming out, I think, in hardcover in April. It's my
excellent.
So you'll get a hardcover. Yes, I will be pushing the crap out of that. Nobody read it because it was a Walmart book, and I'm as proud of that as anything I've ever done. I just think it's rarely do my comics bring tears to my eyes because I know they're fake because I wrote them, so they can't be real. But when I read the last issue and I got to the last page, I got choked up. I was like, why am I getting choked up? This is nothing. I just made this shit up. If I can emotionally affect myself, then I'm like, okay, that was all right. So I'm really proud of it.
And it's funny because we were just talking about 28 pages and 22 pages and stuff. You guys packed a lot of story in every 12-issue, episode.
Well, we used a trick. So it's 12. So we had 12 pages per ish. Yeah, so it's 12
Of Walmart.
for Walmart. But Andy and I came up with at the very beginning that every single page turn was a new scene.
Smart.
So 12 except for the last. So if you read it really closely, the last one page turn is the first. The first 2-page scene is the last page. So there's 144 pages. There's 144 scenes in the whole thing, or 143.
Yeah. Sure.
Yes, it's super in that sort of formalistic way. I love doing formalistic bullshit because I'm a nerd. So it's super experimental. Now I made it hard because it's hard to tell a story where you cannot stay in that same location with that same theme for another. You have to get one page to get in and out.
Well, do you mind doing the math for me for a normal 20 or 22 page book? How many scenes?
Well,
yeah.
It's complete. It's completely. You can do a bottle episode like we were talking about before with Batman 49, where that's one scene for 20 pages, right?
Right. Oh, that's true. Well, yeah, but
the average, if you're just sort of telling us a normal sort of story, you're usually dealing with 4 to 5 scenes. Yeah, so usually a scene is about three pages.
Okay, yeah.
So,
all right, interesting.
So it's hard to usually. And modern comics, old comics, were much more comfortable switching scenes mid-page.
Sure, yes.
Like even Dark Knight Returns, you read DKR, which is on a 16-panel grid. He'll in panel. I talked to Frank about this. In panel 9, he'll be like, okay, Batman was in his cave, now he's on the street. He'll be like, and it feels so natural.
What did he have to say about that? Did he no big deal? He wasn't thinking of that at the time, or?
This is literally like one of the first conversations we had, and I'm just totally nerding out. And we've since become friends, but we weren't friends yet then. But I'm nerding out, and I was like, I noticed you do this, and I wish it just. And I was telling him all about how Omega Men, and I was like constructing this whole because Omega Men reads back and forth. It's all the
yes.
comics reflect each other. And
yes.
And he just puts his hand on my arm and goes, "So you're a formalist, aren't you?" It was both the most dismissive thing he could say and the most proud it made me. It was like it was just he saw right through me. He just sees I was in because he'd just seen he's the gunslinger, right? He's the guy who comes into town being like, I'm the best there ever was. Who's coming up next, kid, to try to shoot me? He's like he's seen us all before. And he's like, yep, you're one of the formalists. I've seen you before. Come at me, kid. Like that was the impression I got. I love it.
Interesting. That's funny. That's really no. You're right about that. He's the top of the mountain for Batman and Daredevil. Oh. And he's the ideal that I think everybody kind of strives for. Absolutely, man.
Yeah. Frank, I'm doing a rereading of Frank's Daredevil, and Frank is as best as knowing only Alan Moore can compete with him. I think in terms of his.
It was an amazing era. It really was when all that shit was coming, and especially coming out and we take them for granted now. But comic book stores weren't as. They existed certainly even in the '60s and stuff, but they were rare and really not outside of big cities. And really, in the '80s, when the direct market really stepped up and stuff, that was kind of exciting. I look forward to talking to one of those creators that I was just telling you about that called me today about that era, because one of his books was like a big part of all that. But that's the thing; it felt more important when that stuff was coming out. God, the both for Dark Knight and Watchmen, those one-page ads that they had of Dave's art. And you got the comedian with his gun and the scope on his gun and everything, or Rorschach walking down the alley and stuff. Those were just iconic, and we never even knew who these characters were. But we're like, oh, something big's coming. You felt it, and the same thing with Dark Knight. Jesus.
Well, you're older than I am, John. I read those in retrospect because I'm a young lad.
Were there books in the 90s that you're like Kingdom Come, I guess? I was impressed by Kingdom Come. That was 10 years later. I don't know, maybe you're still too young for Kingdom Come.
No, I think I'm too old for my,
what was your sweet spot for,
my sweet spot, holy shit. So I got in around Inferno, so we're talking 89. And then, or late 80s. And then I collected, serious collecting,
I mean, the mid '90s. So God, it seems like my whole childhood. It's true what they say. Like what you do when you're 12 is your whole childhood. So it covered me when I was 12.
Okay.
But and then I sort of like a lot of people in my generation, when sort of Image took over, I kind of I was old enough to I couldn't afford both to date and to read comics anymore.
I was the same way, man. 15 years earlier, absolutely. No, believe me, I know. I'm gonna say, well, yeah. I'm like, hey, man, I need to date girls. I comic books are great, but I'm gonna check out. I didn't come back until college because of Watchmen and Dark Knight. I was reading Rolling Stone. I'm programming my college radio station. Think I'm the coolest guy in the world, playing my alternative and new wave music. And all this stuff, and I'm reading Rolling Stone, and all of a sudden there's this like, hey, guess what? Really cool Batman story about to happen. And it's like, what? And I found the local comic book shop, and then as Dark Knight was happening, it's like, oh yeah, by the way, you might find this interesting too, Watchmen. What? So yeah, they got me back. So I've, in between dates, I managed to buy both books. Because they're only $1 each back then.
Yeah, see, I didn't get. I missed out on I went back and bought that stuff, and I read Watchmen when I was 11, and I read DKR every single year of my life between the ages of 9 to 17.
Wow, that's heavy stuff for 9 years old, man.
Oh, yeah, I don't know how I got a copy of it, but yeah, I've said this before, but every Christmas, it was my Christmas tradition as a child, I reread DKR, and the first chapter of Frank's Daredevil. I had no idea they were done by the same person. His art had changed so much. It was like in 5 years. I just didn't, and I wasn't smart enough as a kid to see that. I mean, eventually I figured it out, obviously.
During the book, the way it changes.
Yeah.
Or just the fact that Daredevil and Dark Knight were different.
I didn't realize that Frank Miller had done both. I just didn't realize. I just didn't know. I was not smart enough to figure it out as a kid. I didn't think of who wrote comics. I just thought comics were comics.
Sure.
It took me a while. I remember the first time I was with Len Wein. I figured out Len Wein. I was like, what? Len Wein wrote Batman and Thor? He must be the coolest person of all time.
Great Len. Oh, so good. Good
dude. And he was a good dude.
Yeah, it's so funny. I was just talking about Len. I forget with whom. Maybe Blaine Dowler or maybe Jason Inman, one of my most recent word balloons. But I know, I was telling some Len stories and stuff, and good dude.
He was seriously nice. I first got on Batman. It was really hard because the sort of iconic run had come before me. And he sent me an email. I didn't know him at all. He sent me an email saying, hey, man, I just want to know I read your first issue, and it was fantastic. And I was like,
that's awesome.
And it melted. It was really it was just exactly what I needed at just the right time. Honestly, saved me.
Yeah.
It was perfect. It was so kind,
That's awesome. And, and that's always my question because those guys, are 15 to 20 years older than me. And maybe only even 10 years. But that's always my first question is, okay, you're in your 60s or you're in your 70s and you've been a fan of this stuff since you were a kid. Do you still read new stuff for pleasure from the big two? And I remember I've asked Paul Levitz that question, and Marv, I remember I asked that question and stuff. And, it's always interesting. But, Len always seemed to be a real fan. Till the end, literally.
Yeah, I got to interview Marv at San Diego this year. The cons blend together.
Outstanding.
It was so much fun. Yeah, no, Marv is one of my heroes, and he's the kindest guy of all time. And he's super. I think Marv's more into video games than reading comic books now. He's like a gamer. He loves it.
Oh, that's cool to hear. Well, and also, I've talked to him too, and he's running a lot more novels and then adapting existing IP and making novels of whatever genre and stuff. And I talked to him about that. He was a little. I don't know what he thought of me initially, but I know he's relaxed, and now we can have a decent conversation. And likely at FanX, the Salt Lake City show, that's where I got to do my spotlight one-on-one with Marv, and it was tremendous because who's not a fan of Marv Wolfman's? Good Lord.
I got to ask us. I said, recently Wally someone found a picture of him, and he had behind him his famous hate list, the people he would never talk to again, which was rumored that this existed, but nobody knew about it.
I've never seen this photo. That's amazing.
And it was posted up on a board behind him, and there it was, and there was all the names, and Marv's name was on there.
Oh,
so I was like, Marv, I have to ask. And I was like, why
what happened? Like, why,
Yeah.
how did you get on Wally? You know, Wally Wood's a legend.
Hollywood shit list.
His quote leads Strange Adventures 3. You know, he's one of the best. And I was like, why? He's like, this is like, I know exactly why, because I was working with him and he never talked to me again. And this is what happened. I was like, what happened? He said, I went up to him one day and I told him I loved his work at AC Comics. And that was it.
Wow.
Because Marv was like, he wanted people only to appreciate his, you know, at the end of his new stuff, he was doing a lot of like porn comics and stuff.
Oh yeah, Wits End and everything has a lot of nudity and stuff.
Yeah. And so, and he just wanted people to appreciate his new stuff. And so the fact that Marv had complimented something from in the 50s and his new stuff was enough that he never talked to Marv again.
Oh my God! Wow. Well, he was a complicated guy. That things didn't end up nice for him, unfortunately. But I'm like, oh God. Well, I love talking to Giffen about Woody when it comes to the creation of Power Girl, and you know, you can't help but notice the design of Power Girl's costume and her ample chest, and obviously, of course, DC was a little concerned with that, and if anything, Woody would make them bigger. And I'm telling this story, and I do find that funny. I'm sorry, that's just defiance, and I mean it from that standpoint. And truly, the best creators have been able to appreciate Power Girl for her looks. And one of my favorite scenes, Amanda and Jimmy's run on Power Girl, when Jimmy Olsen is talking to her. And she's like, oh, my God, he's actually, like, you know, maintaining eye contact. He's not, like, looking at oh, there he goes. And it's like, yeah, that's, you know. Anyway.
I love that Amanda Conner Power Girl series. That is one of the great gems in DC history. If people haven't read that, it's fantastic.
This gives me the opportunity to point out I'm doing their Spotlight, Jimmy and Amanda Spotlight at C2E2. Oh. And I know Tom King will be at C2E2 as well.
I will be. Come to C2E2. I'm doing an exclusive night that you have to sign up for at comicsketchart.com if you want to do. It's Clay, Mitch, Doc, and I all together joking, and you can get a sketch and ask any sorts of questions. So if you want to do like a VIP event, I'm supposed to promote the shit out of that, and I want to tell you to come because that's going to be the most fun thing, just to sit there.
Well, now maybe I should really make an effort to talk to Mitch and Doc before C2E2.
You should, so they can tell people to buy Strange Adventures. You should buy it.
Well, that goes without saying, of course. And Clay and I spoke in principle before the holidays, and I'm supposed to touch base with him this month, and we'll set something up as well. But
bother Clay.
We had fun in Terrificon, the three of us, me, you, and Clay. It was a good time.
I'm working now on all three of these projects with literally my best friends.
That's excellent, man.
And
that's terrific.
Yeah, so I have the best job in the world right now. I don't know how it sort of happened or how it ended up this way, and it makes me nervous because I'm sure it'll all go away. But right now I'm creating three of the comics. I can't imagine making them better, and I'm creating with the best people in comics, just the best artists, and literally best people. Like Clay, Mitch, and Doc are just kind, nice, and cool. So yeah,
that's cool. Well, I look forward to hearing. I know you've got your secret project that we can't talk about, and I don't know who your artist is for that, but I look forward to finding out and also finding out what the subject is, obviously.
Which is the big one. That's the big one that's going to like.
Yeah. That's cool, man. Oh, that's great.
It'd be a lot easier to sell than Adam Strange. You'd be like, what? The guy with the fin on his head? And of course, Strange Adventures is the second character. It's also about Mr. Terrific. Adam Strange is a co-lead. We talk about Adam Strange the whole time.
Oh, you know, that's funny. I didn't know if you wanted to reveal that or not.
Yeah, it's out there. We put it up on the web.
Okay.
Yeah, that's out
yeah, that is. Well, yeah, that's the other.
I don't want to reveal his role and sort of what his relationship.
Okay. All right, fair enough. Then I'll stop myself.
But yeah, Mr. Terrific is the other sort of co-lead of the book. Like he'll have as much screen time as Adam Strange.
Michael Holt, ladies and gentlemen. Let's hear it for him.
Yes, and I didn't really, I announced this, and I thought people would go, "Yay, Mr. Terrific!" But mostly I got Mr. Terrific. Like people were not
really.
Yes, I was a little shocked.
I'm stunned because truly, I was not a fan when I first saw Mr. Terrific because I'm like, "What's with the racing outfit or whatever?" But then
like that
during what's that?
Like that jacket?
Yeah, his Fair Play jacket. It looks very Formula One to me. I don't know, but or it did back in the day. But
Mitch has a copy. We're trying to get Mitch to wear it. Mitch has like a real, so he can draw it. You know, he bought a copy.
No way. They actually make a Mr. Terrific jacket like that?
Mitch has it.
Wow, that's amazing. Holy shit. God, if I were a 20-something comic book fan, I would absolutely buy a Mr. Terrific jacket.
Right.
That would be amazing. Because, well, no, but I was going to say, really, the way that Jeff and James Robinson and those guys wrote him and David Goyer in JSA, I really grew to love him, and I'm a huge fan. And I was really bummed at the New 52 that his solo book didn't, stick, because I'm like, yeah, he's amazing. He was great in Checkmate.
He was so good.
I think he's a wonderful character.
Rucka wrote him so well in Checkmate.
Yeah.
And Jeff had this whole thing where he was the atheist of the group and sort of had this thing.
Yes. Right, and he has that great encounter with Spectre and everything.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
No, he's wonderful. And I'm not a big, Thor's more powerful than the Thing or whatever, power levels and stuff like that. But I do always like, who's the smartest guys in the Marvel universe or the DC universe? And I do kind of like that he's number 3. After Batman and Lex, it's like, okay, then there's Michael. And it's like, all right, that's cool. They all can't be number 1, but it's like, all right, because, yeah, he is really smart. That's excellent. Mr. Terrific. He's number 3.
But,
with a bullet.
But if so, in Heroes in Crisis, I knew obviously I was going to work with him. So he's in Heroes in Crisis, and he tells a story. He's like, sometimes if you're in a race and you go so much faster than the people ahead of you, you eventually lap them and you come up behind them. So it looks like you're number 3 when you're actually just too far ahead.
There you go. Nice.
Which, I love Mr. Terrific. He of course has the thing that most attracts Tom to any character, a horribly fucked up origin story. He's like he was the perfect guy, perfect athlete, perfect, and then he got married and his wife was expecting their first child, and she wanted to hang out with him, and they kind of they crossed. He very sort of Peter Parker-ish. He's like, oh, not now. And she got in a car and drove and crashed, and They both died.
Right. With the baby, yes.
With the unborn child.
Unborn baby, yeah.
So that there's behind this sort of Michael Holt, and now this idea of this guy has lost the one person who can understand him and this child, and he kind of blames it on himself. And there's just again playing with the themes of fate and guilt. And the idea that he's sort of alone in the world, and he doesn't believe in God, he doesn't believe in any of that stuff, and his only company are sort of these 3 spheres that circle him everywhere he goes and constantly talk to him, and are just like extensions of himself. These robots. I mean, there's just so much to work with that character, and even just the idea of a guy who decided to be perfect. Like, what a bizarre thing to do, and then to achieve it. Like, I'm gonna be Einstein plus the greatest Olympic athlete. That's the ambition I have for my life, and I'm going to achieve that. And what does that mean? That once you achieve it, you still lose your wife? That's just so much. There's just so much there to grind out and to dig into. I mean, yeah.
No, I hear you, man. It's so funny. I was always fascinated by the original Mr. Terrific just because of his very weirdly simple costume, and also again the same kind of and that's kind of what the point of the Spectre story is. That Terry Sloan, the original Mr. Terrific, drove himself the same way to be the smartest and the best athlete and everything. And of course, fair play.
Yeah, and of course, that idea of fair play, which is like a child's version of what justice is, which is the ultimate ideal of all society. So that's the heart of him, is that he's looking for fairness. I think that can be just such especially once you see what the story's about and the idea of how that comes to. How fair play comes to play throughout the whole thing. Yeah, there's a ton there.
Well, and I mean, again, you get a sense of that after the first issue. It's again, I think, as I just had this conversation with was it with Jim? I don't know. It might have been Jim Zub, but I always say like the perfect. Oh no, it was was it Johnny? It was. I know, man. I've talked to and coming up on Word Balloon, Sanford Green, Johnny Christmas, among other creators. But I was just describing the perfect first issue is always, okay, you got a sense of where the story's going. Do you want to keep going or not?
Yeah.
And do you give me enough story in that first issue? And I think you guys achieved that with Strange Adventures. So you'll understand. You'll understand the basic direction of the story by the end of the book.
I always think of Why the Last Man as the perfect first issue. I think that's probably the best issue.
Yes.
First issue ever written, with Saga being also in the top 10. Like BKV knows how to do it.
Sure, he does. Of course he does. Yeah.
And but yeah, like you get there, you end up you're like, oh, I like this character, I like Yorick, I understand what he is, and then you end with all the women are gone. So like, oh, you have a character you like, and you have the situation. You're like, what the fuck comes next? Like that's just perfect. All the men are gone. Sorry.
No, I know. Sure. What a great book. Yeah, man. Good stuff. Crazy. So what else are we?
So Columbo, we're just talking Columbo now.
Oh yeah, yes, please. You're doing a rewatch of Columbo. Yes, sir. I just got to ask you.
Well, that's what I'm writing all these mysteries. I mean, so I'm trying to. Again, you're trying to research and trying to make it better. So like, in just looking at pure like how to solve mysteries, there's nothing better than a Columbo. I mean, I'm reading Agatha Christie, and I'm reading.
Excellent
things, but
who else?
I'm reading a lot of Mickey Spillane stuff.
Oh, terrific!
I'm reading a lot of Jim Thompson stuff.
Excellent, fantastic. Elmore, you doing any Elmore in there or no?
Yeah, well, I've already read Elmore, so I read that.
Oh, okay.
So I was fortunate enough to go through an Elmore phase like 10 years ago, so at least I don't have to do that again.
You know who I think is really good at doing just great potboiler mysteries and detective stories? Max Collins. Max Collins. I really love his novels, and really his and God, I'm blanking now on his great classic detective that spans from the 30s to the 60s. Nathan Heller, I believe. Nathan Heller? Yeah.
Oh, well.
I'm making sure that I'm like, wait a minute, isn't that the guy that Jeff just did in Doomsday Clock? No,
this goes back to you, John. You're the origin of this, because I was listening to you and Howard Chaykin talk, and he started listing off all these great.
Oh yeah, Alan First. Oh God,
Potboiler or authors, and I was like, I don't know any of these people.
Oh yeah. Oh no, Howard's the best when it comes to what should I be reading right now, Howard, or even what should I be watching. He's he knows he's a great storyteller and he knows good stories. But yeah, Alan First, Furst, I believe, is the spy novelist from the Polish spy novelist from the 30s and 40s that just write these amazing espionage stories of like the war era and everything. They're just great. So good. So yeah, no, he's a guy that I absolutely appreciate and everything. But I did and I've talked about it before on Word Balloon. Unfortunately, it's only been shown in Canada and Germany. This weird conspiracy show that Jimmy Church, the conspiracy podcaster, hosted, and Mike Oming and I actually did separate episodes of it. And mine was about JFK. And Max wrote a book about this failed attempt at an assassination attempt at JFK in Chicago that happened 6 weeks before Dallas. And the big conspiracy theorists believe the people that killed JFK first tried to kill him in Chicago, then they tried to kill him in Tampa Bay, and finally they got him in Dallas. And Max wrote this incredible Nathan Heller detective story about the failed Chicago hit. And unfortunately, he was recovering from a heart attack at the time. Because I was telling the producers, I'm like, we got to talk to Max. Max knows all about this stuff. He would be great to talk to because he did the real research on the real events that are attributed to this conspiracy theory. But anyway. So back to Columbo.
Do you know there's a Columbo book where he solves the JFK murder?
I have not read that book. I am aware of it. That's excellent. Someone
thought that was a good idea. Someone's like, I've read the next Columbo novel. I know he solved JFK.
That's fantastic. Just the conceit for people who've never are aware of Columbo because of the trench coat or whatever, or even if you're not. The great thing about it, it's like funny you mentioned Agatha Christie. It is classic English drawing room murder mystery. Someone in this room is a murderer.
Yeah.
And instead of it being, Miss Marple or Super Sleuth or Poirot or somebody like that, it's the least likely guy in this ridiculous rumpled trench coat and just like this blue collar cop. And the murderers always think they're so much superior to him, and of course he does his thing and just quietly, slowly peels the onion.
That's the classic setup, is that it's always, the murderer is always someone from the upper crust, someone who's rich, and when he shows up, they're just like, oh, I can dismiss this little man. And of course, it gets the audience so mad. They're like, how dare you dismiss Columbo? And like, from the moment and of course, the it's funny to go back to the noir thing we were talking about before. The great conceit of Columbo, what makes it beyond. And did you know Columbo's based on like Crime and Punishment originally, right? Like that's like its base.
Well, that makes sense.
It has like
I never realized that, but William Levinson and I forget Sam Levinson, I believe, and William Link, the guys who created Columbo. Yeah, that's amazing.
But like Crime and Punishment, if you've read that book, like you see the crime up front, and then you see the detective come and solve it, and he does that thing where he kind of makes friends with the criminal and sort of draws him in.
Yeah. No. That's what I'm saying. That's surprising. I didn't realize that. It didn't occur to me at the time.
Raskolnikov, is that his name? I don't know.
I forget who. Yeah, I forget who wrote Crime and Punishment.
No, just yes, you wrote about it. But
Shameless.
See, I can remember that, but not Holly. What this brain's useless.
Levinson and Link wrote. They did a lot of great detective shows. They did Banachek, the George Peppard show, and they did. I'll tell you another one that's much more of a straight up whodunit is the Ellery Queen television show. It was only one season, and it was Timothy Hutton's dad, Jim Hutton, as Ellery Queen, and it's perfect Ellery Queen, unbelievable. But those were absolutely straight up whodunits.
It's not
unlike
enough
Columbo.
that I watched 7 seasons of Columbo. You have to out old TV me. It's like I've committed enough to you, John, for your TV references.
No, come on, man. So, what are your favorite Columbos?
But
all right, I'll start with one of mine. Jack Cassidy as the magician.
Oh, of course.
Love that.
The Nazi magician.
Yes.
That makes it all the better.
Yes, he was a Nazi magician. I know. That was so great. And Jack Cassidy, several times the bad guy on Columbo.
3 times he made an appearance. Always great.
How many?
3. He's one of the 3.
Yeah, I was going to say 3.
Him and Folk, the guy from, not Folk, Culp. Yeah, Robert Culp. Right?
Robert Culp. Patrick McGowan did several.
Yeah.
And Robert Vaughn did a couple.
Robert Vaughn's is great with the ship.
On the cruise ship. That's a fantastic episode, yes.
But you know what, to go back to Star Trek, the one that, if I had to pick my favorite, I love the...
Shatner?
The Leonard... Shatner's good, the Leonard Nimoy one.
Oh, the Doctor one.
Where he's the evil doctor. Mwah.
It is. It's evil Mr. Spock as a surgeon. Yes.
Evil. He plays, because you don't. I mean, I've seen him in the Body Snatchers and all that stuff, but you forget like he didn't play Spock as emotionless. That's just kind of who Leonard Nimoy played everyone as.
I saw, and it's so funny. Rob Burnett, my buddy, who's the YouTuber and director of Free Enterprise and one of the greatest Star Trek experts I know. I mentioned to him in the mid-'90s there was a Bonanza TV movie, and of course none of the original cast is in it. It was all the descendants of the original Ponderosa people. But they had a story with Frank James, Jesse James' brother, and Nimoy plays Frank James. And it's great because it's a straight-up Western, and it's really, for a TV movie, a well-made Western. And Nimoy is very good as Frank James, and it's not, Spock is a cowboy. It works. He's very good in it.
I watched it's like a sea-level noir from the 50s with DeForest Kelley as the star.
Oh, that's great! I'd love to watch that.
It's on Amazon Prime. You can watch it.
Oh, wonderful!
And he plays this guy who's like. He dreams that he murders someone. It's an awesome setup. He has a dream that he murders someone, and then he walks by the house that he dreamed the murder in. He goes in and he discovers that it looks like someone got murdered in that exact way that he dreamed it. And so he's like, he doesn't know if he did it and he just doesn't remember, or whether he's got psychic powers, or he's like, he's driving him insane. He's like, he doesn't know if he committed this murder or not. He just knows he dreamed the murder.
Oh, wow.
So it's got a great, but the weirdest thing is DeForest Kelley is like the young ingenue. He's like this super handsome guy. And you're like,
he did have pretty eyes. He was an interesting looking guy. He's in Gunfight at the OK Corral. He's one of the Klan.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, and again, I'm not trying to one-up you, but in shared like things of DeForest Kelley's past.
No,
there's an old-time radio suspense episode that he is the star of, and it's from the 50s. It's near the end of the run. It's like late 50s, but it was so cool to discover, that. And he and the guy who played Oscar Goldman in the $6 Million Man and Bionic Woman, Richard Anderson, they were contract guys. So they're in so many movies and television shows, prior to their big success in the series that we know them from. And it's amazing, especially like movies, big movies and stuff, where it's like, oh yeah, there's DeForest Kelley and Cary Grant, or whatever. I mean, it's like, wow, what the hell's going on? That's amazing. And Richard Anderson was the same way. Oscar Goldman, same thing, same kind of career.
Fear in the Night is the name of the movie. Fear in the Night.
Ooh, writing it down.
Very generic noir name that you'd never remember. That's why all noir movies, they all have the same title. They're all called Fear.
Oh, absolutely. But they're amazing. I love those, and I also love all the classic programmer detective movies, whether we're talking about the ethnic ones like Mr. Moto and Charlie Chan, but even Bulldog Drummond, and certainly the Rathbone Nigel Bruce Sherlock Holmes movies. They're totally cartoon Sherlock Holmes, and especially poor Nigel Bruce's Dr. Watson. Extraordinary, I mean, it really is just an old British guy puffing all the time. But they're fun. They're really fun, and I just love the cheapness of them as well, and that they are these little pot boilers that were made on a shoestring, and they fascinate me. Though the look of them as much as the triteness of the stories.
We have clearly gone beyond comics for all the kind.
Oh, I figured we took the left turn. Yeah,
we took the left turn. If you have turned it off by now, I would not blame you.
No, stop. Oh. They love this stuff. Yeah, but you know something? The great thing's going to be, there's going to be people at conventions going up to you going, I watch Columbo.
Oh! Do you know how much I want a Gabriel Hardman Columbo piece?
What about Gabe and Columbo?
I want a Gabriel Hardman Columbo sketch. Sorry, you said cons. I was like,
that's a great idea.
Right? I'm telling you.
Oh, he would do that.
What?
He'll only do it for you now because that's like his amazing Orson Welles, Citizen Kane era Batman.
Yes, so good.
It's ridiculously good, and he's like, nope, did it for a guy. He asked for it specifically. I'll never do it again. And I understand. I can appreciate it because Gabe would be doing only that for like years because all of us hundreds of fans would be like, oh my God, I want that. I have, and I'm looking at it right now, I have two Gabe Hardman wonderful drawings. One of American Flag that I love, but even more so, we mentioned him earlier, a 50s Captain Comet.
Oh, yeah, Captain Comet.
And it's right above a Chris Samnee, Dan Dare.
So, and I love Samnee. Samnee
he's the best.
Sketch is maybe the best comic sketch artist of all time. Maybe
it's amazing. They're amazing.
Except for, of course, Mitch and Clay.
Well, they're good too. But don't get me wrong. I also have and you'll appreciate this. I have a Super Chief from Chris Samnee as well.
Super Chief.
Yes, with the buffalo head.
That's my next 12-issue series, Super Chief.
You should totally find a way to shoehorn.
It's just going to be Super Chief. Stories. Anyone Can Be Sad by Tom King and Mitch Carey.
Team him up with Apache Chief.
Speaking of American Flag, so the first time I met Chaykin, since we were talking about Chaykin before.
Oh yeah, please.
I was in Richmond Comic Con, and it was kind of a dead con where no one was. This is before I did Batman, and people actually, nobody cared about me. So we were just kind of talking to each other, and Chaykin was a few things down, and I went up to him, being totally facetious and sarcastic, and I was like, hey, you're Howard Chaykin, right? He's like, yes. I was like, I just want to tell you, I do not like how you just ripped off Frank Miller for American Flag. Like, I've read Dark Knight Returns, and I just see you using all those techniques in your comic, and I can't take it anymore. Like, being like, because obviously he did it first, and Frank ripped him.
Well, yeah. So what was his reaction?
And he did not get the joke at all. This was very poor planning on my part.
Oh God!
And he got legitimately mad.
That's it.
He's like, you obviously know nothing about comics. You know nothing. And I was like, oh shit. I was like, oh no, of course, I'm just kidding. But he just went off. And
so have you had better scenes since then?
And I retreated. I did, and he actually sent me an email being like, oh, I found out who you are later, and obviously this was a joke. And
oh, that's good.
Probably the nicest in the world about it. Yeah, and since we've talked, I'm one of the people who likes to hear old stories from old guys who are
oh my God
in the industry, and he has the best. So
yeah, and truly, like, Howard's obviously, based on your story and my own experience and stuff, he can be a prickly man, and I understand that. And because of that, he has amazing stories about rubbing up against some contemporaries and older creators and stuff. Great stories.
Well, he was Wood's assistant, so it all comes back into full circle.
This is true too. Did you read his Rough and Ready Hanna-Barbera stuff? The Rough and Ready show that he did?
I read the first one. I didn't read the whole thing.
Dude, I'm telling you, it was a fantastic miniseries. It was excellent, and I loved it because it had that great animation Black Sad look for it, as far as comic books that look kind of animation-y in terms of the way they drew it and stuff. And it was great. It was like Rough and Ready were Martin and Lewis from the 50s. If they had lived, if they stayed a team, if they still hated each other, it really was this great comment about old Hollywood trying to be relevant in today's social media aware entertainment world, and it's so fantastic. It's great. It was very subversive. And he's like, "Oh, you should have seen the original version that Hanna-Barbera wouldn't allow. A lot more sex in it, Pally." I'm like, okay.
Who would have guessed? Who would have guessed?
Exactly. In fact, it was your panel. Our panel went long, and who's yelling at us? Howard. And it was like, oh my God, there's Howard. That's great. He's the best. Honestly, I am like, the way Jimmy Kimmel adored Don Rickles is my adoration of Howard Chaykin. And I can't help it. I immediately break into a smile. He kills me. And shame on me, man. I haven't been talking to him about second volume of Hey Kids Comics. I love that. I think it's a great series. And anytime he comes out with something, whether it's controversial or not, and I'm glad that he is still outspoken and controversial. I thought United States of Hysteria was a very bold comic at a very hot-button time, and Howard is fearless. And it's like, yeah, I'm telling my story. I don't care. And most of you who don't like it aren't really reading it. And are just reacting at covers and things like that.
Well, I was mad at Hey Kids Comics because that was an idea I wanted to do. I was like, I want to do an independent book that's just about the history of comics. The fucker got
There's time.
First.
You got time. You'll have that's like Brian was all ready to do his Jewish mob book, and Judd Winnick beat him to it with Caper, and he's like, son of a bitch. So Judd's another guy that I don't talk to enough, that I always love, and then happy to see him and happy when he's on the show. I should definitely
never met Judd. See, I don't.
Oh, he's the best. And how many people do you know that are on like an amazing reality show? It's like, yeah, that I never watched. I was too old to give a shit about the real world, but I just am fascinated. I'm like, so like, tell me about that. What the hell, man?
I watched him in the real world. I'm old enough.
Did you watch his season, the San Francisco season?
I watched it I feel like I watched it in reruns when I got into Real World when I was in after college. My current wife, who was then my girlfriend, was into the Real World, and we watched a lot of it together.
No, and believe me, that's like a great show for in your 20s and everything. No, it makes sense.
Oh, yeah, we watched the challenges. We were all about it.
Hilarious.
We went from High Art to Real World Road Rules Challenge. That is with Columbo in between. That is what we have to cover.
Are you tired? I mean, it is late your time. I don't want to mess you up. I mean, I'm happy to keep going if you want to keep going. It's up to you.
No, we can keep talking. Do I have anything else I could tell you about Hollywood?
I wanted. Oh yeah, shame on me. Yes, I should. Whatever you can share about New Gods, which I know obviously is still in production and you can't say much, but no, please, if whatever update you can give us. I
can say nothing about these shows.
There you go.
That's like I am no good at. I mean, I can say Pablum. We've talked before. Like I can say Pablum. I can say like it's wonderful working on them, but it's like nothing an audience wants to hear of like the actual details of. I feel like you have to ask me like 5 years from now, so I can tell you. I can tell you my Howard Chaykin-esque story. But I do wonder though, just philosophically, if Hollywood is worth it. Now that I'm sort of immersed in it.
Interesting.
I wonder, I've been having these conversations with multiple people, and I think is it something that's, it's different for different people, obviously. Like if you're a Mark Miller or a Robert Kirkman, Hollywood is worth it. You are a freaking millionaire.
Sure. Ed seems to be having fun, Brubaker,
Yeah, I mean,
definitely having fun. But when I've listened to your podcast with him and listening to his experience working on that riff, I wouldn't want to do that. That didn't sound fun. Where you're working 24 hours a day for a director who's so demanding of you. Like,
understood. Yeah.
I have 3 kids, and I couldn't do that. That would just be impossible.
Well, where do you think? I mean, it's because it's interesting. I mean, again, I do think independent, creative people can create content and not have to answer to, just the standard way, whether it's a publisher or a movie studio or a television network or whatever. I mean, do you think that the digital platform is making it easier as a storyteller to do what you want to do? Or, I mean, is it as simple as, you have less editorial, things, edicts and everything to deal with comic-wise and stuff, and you can just do your own thing more and tell your story the way you want to tell it?
Well, I think the digital platform in terms of TV, I should say my expertise here is limited. I have a show that's been bought by a major network with a major TV star, and we're developing it. And that I'm co-writing with the movie star.
Wow.
And then of course, I'm writing this TV show with the movie with Ava DuVernay. So, yes. and then I had another TV show that went fairly far down before I got tired of it and just didn't want to work on it anymore.
Huh.
And also, I grew up in LA. I grew up in the show business. My mother is a studio executive for Fox and Warner and Universal and did I miss one? Fox, Warner Brothers, where she's at most of her career.
Wow.
So I grew up in movie studio a lot. So I'm not like completely ignorant. So I have some mild expertise in it. But it's. Do you get more out of doing, like, take Frank Miller's career? Like, he took years off to write the RoboCop movies, but he goes to a con, he's not signing any RoboCops. Like, nobody's thinking that.
Right.
Or even he directed his own movie, the Spirit, with Scarlett Johansson's in that movie, with the real people are in that movie. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. But still, like, years and years from now, when he passes away, his obit, the first paragraph's not going to read he made movies, he directed, wrote TV shows. It's going to read Dark Knight Returns, Well, Sin City, though, of course. But Sin City is a comic book. Agreed. Not as well. Now that's and again, I certainly hope we are decades away from finding out how this will play out. But I do wonder if his obit will be the guy behind the Sin City movies. And 300, I know that's a big. And 300, of course. But if just in terms of, I don't know. It's. But I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, and yes, I mean, those of us who really love these creators certainly are aware of the breadth of their careers, and also appreciate exactly what they did for the. I mean, again, the Netflix Daredevil owes a lot to Frank Miller, and so does the movie, and the same thing goes with the flavors of Batman as well. I mean, for Frank Miller, I put this out on Twitter and someone, but to me, Frank Miller is just as much a creator of Batman as Bob Kane is, just in terms of our modern conception of what Batman is. Understood. Sure. No, a massive imprint on the character. That, and then God, it was so funny. I remember a couple of weeks ago they were doing the Mount Rushmore of Batman artists, and it's like you can't just limit it to 4. There's more than 4. But I think from a writer's standpoint, I think you're right. I think Frank is very important. I mean, you can put Frank right next to Bill Finger, obviously, and And even I hung out Brian K. Vaughan a little bit, and dude, that guy is solid. He's kind and wonderful. But to me, he'll be a comic book writer first. I don't think when I look at Brian K. Vaughan, I don't think the Dome. I think Saga. I think Why the Last Sure. And it's the same with Grant. I mean, Grant went off and did the TV show Happy, right? Yeah, but to me, his legacy is I don't know if. Oh, sure. Sometimes I think Hollywood is just sort of a distraction. I mean, the pay is good, but is it worth it? Is it worth taking years off of your productive time as a comic book writer to engage in Hollywood? I'm not sure. I'm just that's kind of the place that. And I'm as someone who's currently doing that, I'm just not sure it's worth the moment. I don't know. The question will be, who of the Walking Dead fans will follow Kirkman
and go, what else are you writing, Robert? And follow him to comics. And the same thing can be said for Garth Ennis with the success of The Boys. You know, I mean, I'm thinking of the really, you know, amazing comic book TV or movies that have really stuck. I mean, you know, it's so funny. I mean, God, look at all the success of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, and Marvel continues to reboot Guardians. I saw Dave Harper from the Sketched Off-Panel podcast commenting on Twitter that it's literally just under a calendar year, and we've got another #1 for Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's like, wow, you know. I mean, so does the success or the potential success of TV and movies translates in? Oh, now I'm a Walking Dead fan. Well, now I'm a Robert Kirkman fan. I'm going to follow him back to his comics. I don't know.
Yes, I think the answer to that has to be yes, because Walking Dead was the #1 selling comic for so long.
Well, but again, it was still Walking Dead. My question is, when you are done with the Walking Dead universe, do you follow Robert on to Invincible or, you know, any of his other, you know, Thief of Thieves or whatever? That's my personal favorite Kirkman book.
Oh, really? Yeah, I like Thief of Thieves.
Oh, I love Thief, and I love what Diggle did with it, and everybody that's worked on it. At the end of the day, if you give me a good crime story, and you had me at hello. I mean, they're amazing, and that's one of the things that really brought me back to reading comics regularly again, was seeing the amount of great stuff. I mean, I was late to the game with David Lappman, Stray Bullets, but
so good.
Yeah, and I mean, well, and really, I got my feet wet with Rucka and Brubaker and what they were doing with Batman, both of them.
Yeah.
And then, you know, found out about, you know, like I read the book that Brubaker and Michael Lark did, the crime photographer book.
Their first Vertigo book, yeah.
Yeah. And right now its name is escaping me, just like Holly's. But yeah,
I have it on my shelf over there, but it's too far away.
Private Eye, I want to say, the Private Eye. Maybe?
No, that's the BKV book.
Oh, that of course that is. Shame on me. Yes, shame on me.
Oh, it's too far. I can see it on the shelf.
But and it was like, as you're looking for it, yeah. I mean, like Brian, you know, Ultimate Spider-Man, great, and it's like, hey, you know, I'm doing this book called Powers, and it's like, oh, cool. I like cops in a superhero world. That sounds intriguing. And obviously, Mike's art was so distinctive. It was great.
Oh yeah,
it was great discovering that. I mean, and that's the thing. And like all of a sudden, it was like, oh, look at all this really good crime comic stuff that's out there right now. That's good. They got me. I'm back. I'm back, baby.
I think, but that's my point. That generation of comic writers, which brought me back in the early aughts to comics, and I think it's just unprecedentedly good. Just the Brad Meltzers, Mark Miller, Brian K. Vaughan,
yes.
Bendis,
Rucka,
Brubaker, Winnick,
Jeff
Johns, yeah.
Yeah.
Hollywood called on all of them and took them away from us, you know? Like, I feel like that was responsible for, we lost so much quality because those guys got called away to do movies and TVs. And I feel like for the medium, it's like, I don't know if that's, it's almost tragic and it's almost kind of.
Well, but then I go back to my first conversation with Mark Miller, and I always think about this, and especially where he is now. And he even said back in 2006, in the midst of Civil War, he's like, you know, the average guy or woman, you know, they get about 10 years at a DC or a Marvel, and, you know, they're kind of the hot guy or the hot woman as far as, you know, being popular and everything. And then, you know, it's time for another generation. I mean, you know, like
that's absolutely true. Yeah.
And yeah, so I think the cyclical nature of comics, especially for DC and Marvel in particular, but that's why now we're in an interesting era when these guys can make their names, and including yourself, at DC and Marvel, and, you know, I mean, your next whatever Sheriff of Babylon-esque non-superhero book and stuff, you've got an audience that you can bring to it and stuff. And I mean, I think the same thing is happening. Like Mark's still making new comics, and I even think a lot of his post DC and Marvel stuff. Like it's so funny you were talking about like with Star Trek Picard, and Starlight is his Star Trek Picard, where it's like his Flash Gordon.
Yep.
Is a senior citizen and goes back.
I love Starlight with that art.
It's my favorite of the Miller World books.
Me too.
And
Me too.
It's very interesting. Same. And it was at I believe Fox. Yeah, as I remember last month's conversation with Mark, it was at Fox, and then Disney acquired Fox, And as he said, he goes, they're too busy with Frozen and the Marvel movies to worry about making Starlight. So he's like, I don't know what's going to happen. He goes, they still have the option technically. He said, but it wouldn't surprise me if eventually it comes back and they just don't do anything with it. So, but it's crazy because I even remember back in 2015, he was, dream casting with me. And he's like, Bruce Willis is too obvious. But I'm like, Liam Neeson, man. That would be a great Starlight. Make it Liam Neeson. He's in everything.
Of course. Yeah, that makes sense.
I would love to see Liam Neeson do. By the way, a quick Star Wars tangent. Why don't we have a Qui-Gon movie before Liam Neeson is too old? And then maybe he just canceled himself with his recent comments or whatever. I hope not. But I would love to see a Qui-Gon movie. I don't understand why we never got one.
He was great as Qui-Gon. That was a good character. Shitty movie.
Absolutely.
Good
That's what I'm saying. Like, if you want to do a prequel, give me an early adventure of Qui-Gon's and everything. Or, of course, Mace Windu, for Christ's sake.
Oh, yeah, that would also be awesome.
Don't understand.
It'll come eventually. They're gonna need new content for DC Plus. Then everyone will get a Star Wars. You get a Star Wars. You get a Star Wars. Everyone gets a Star Wars.
Well, did you enjoy Mandalorian?
Yes, I did enjoy Man. Much more than I mean, it's a kid's serial more than anything else. It's very much like a guy goes off and has a very childish adventure almost. Like
that's fair.
I have to, and every a lot of them it's like always a cliche. There's a village full of people who are being threatened by a bad guy. I go defeat the bad guy. There's a heist going on, but the heisters are mean, so I got to undo. But I loved it for being that, for just being simple and real.
Yes.
I think it was. I thought it was something where I was like, man, I want to watch this with my kid, and he's going to love it, and I'm going to love it, and especially the Jon Favreau written episodes, the first bunch.
Oh God! Yes.
I was like, this is the start. It was the closest thing to the first three or the middle movies, however you want to.
Yeah, the first, the original trilogy, absolutely.
Yeah,
I agree.
To me, and I'm ignorant of the cartoons. I didn't watch the cartoons, so please forgive me. I've read some of the novels, but not a ton of them. But to me, it was the best Star Wars I'd seen since the first three. I haven't like
completely agree.
Including the prequels and the sequels. Although I like parts of all of those movies, but just in terms of getting back to that feeling of what Star Wars can be, when Mandalorian first started, I was like, I love this. I just couldn't be more in love with it.
I want to assure you, unless I'm watching, no, because it would have said watch now. I turned on my CBS All Access to see.
I see how it is. Not even interviewing me, checking on the card.
No.
I get it.
I just wanted to see for both of us, and it doesn't seem to be up yet. I bet it is going to be at 7:00 Eastern. That's or 8:00 Eastern or something like that. But right now, all it says still is watch trailer.
Well, I'm glad you told me, so I probably would have watched it tonight if it was up. I would have.
I know.
I have so much to write tomorrow. Because it was a short week.
Really?
My kids, obviously it was Martin Luther King Day on Monday, and then my kids were off for an extra day for why the fuck they were off. So,
wow.
So I read a script a week, basically. So I had to turn something in by Friday. So when you lose 2 days of the week, suddenly Thursday becomes such a crunch day. So tomorrow I will be scripting like a motherfucker. I'm on page 14. I just got to page 22. Not too much left. I wrote the same scene 16 times today. I could not figure out the scene. It was just a guy sitting in a diner, and I just kept erasing it and rewriting it.
Hilarious. Oh, all right. Now, wait. Before then again, because we just mentioned Star Trek Picard, what'd you think of the short treks?
I didn't watch them. I haven't watched them yet.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Were they good? I don't know. I watched the first Discovery.
No, they were not good.
And I was like...
Which one?
We've discussed this before, but the first season Discovery wasn't sort of my thing. I could see other people loving it, but it wasn't my thing. And I've sort of... I didn't... I'm one of the guys that didn't really like the new movies, the Chris Pine movies.
Sure.
I think the casting is perfect. Beautiful. I mean, the guys they fucking nailed it, but just... It's not...
No, not good stories.
It's funny, watching Mandalorian. I know Mandalorian had a $200 million budget, but you can still tell that because they're a little budget limited. Like, it looks a little fake, and they're using...
Oh, yeah. Well, and they're using that stagecraft technology where I guess it's like a giant seat as opposed to a green screen. It's a giant like HD screen that projects all these various locations, and they're it's on a soundstage.
Yeah, exactly. And you can kind of tell it has just a little bit of low budgetness to it, just a hint of it.
Yeah,
and like and somehow that makes it better. It's like sometimes a little lower budget makes things better. It makes it a little more real. I don't know why that is, but yeah, well, the high budget Star Trek, it's not done it for me so far.
Well, and honestly, philosophically, I keep coming back to this. They play at Star Trek. They are very big about giving you fan service. Oh, there's a tribble, or oh, that reminds me of that old scene or whatever. But when it comes down to actually telling an interesting science fiction story, they fail, and the stories are very basic and they're badly written. They're badly written. Damn it. And there's no other answer.
Which is why I wrote the Batman for Fortune View Response. He would come full circle.
That's right. It all goes back to Thomas Wayne and Bruce.
Full circle.
It's true. And Michael Burnham and Michelle Yeoh. That's exactly.
No, but I didn't write the shorts. Shorts are no good? Okay, well, then good. I won't.
Oh, no. They'll infuriate you because... And it's so amazing. Michael Chabon is such a talented writer, and I love his books, and I am so excited for Cavalier and Clay being a TV series. That's insane. It's going to be on Showtime if you don't know.
Yeah, no.
I'm sure you do because you're plugged in. But, man, he just is fascinated by that one moment in the cage and later in the menagerie where Spock smiles. And he's like, I've got to put that in canon. And I think the majority of us older Star Trek fans are like, no, you don't. It was the first, it's the pilot. Everyone's not fully formed in the pilot. Sometimes it takes a couple episodes. And especially when NBC made them choose between the number one character. Well, first of all, they didn't like the idea of having a first officer as a woman. And they thought she was too cold. And they're like, lose number one or lose Mr. Spock, the guy with the ears. And so he just put Majel Barrett's character of number one into Mr. Spock.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that's the Spock we know. And it's like, but no, you don't have to explain this stupid smile. And it bums me out because I do think Ethan Peck is capable. And I think that's the other thing, just like you said, the actors are great. I mean, you said that about the JJ cast. I mean, I'd say that about the actors for Discovery. They're all great actors. They're just being given lousy stories. I think. I mean, that's just me. I think it fails in the writing. And that's why I'm nervous, but hopefully, I mean, Picard from the trailers looks like they're doing all the right stuff.
I mean, you can just cross your fingers. I mean, Star Trek's tough because most, including the original series, most Star Trek, the first seasons always suck. So that is kind of a hard, it's a hard, like Seinfeld was only good in the fourth season. Sometimes shows are like that.
Oh,
Star
yeah.
Trek
No,
that.
Yeah, with the exception of the original series, no, I think you're right. Yeah, I mean, Next Generation is rough. Deep Space Nine took a long time to really set up and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, now I do appreciate a lot of first season Deep Space Nine episodes, but at first, you're like, all right, why do we care about this? And then finally, it all kind of fits together. Did you see the Deep Space Nine documentary?
No, I'm behind on everything. I have 3 children. I've been watching a lot
and you're writing a lot of shit too. What now?
Oh, I am writing. Yeah, I'm writing a movie, TV show, and 3 comics. So it's a lot.
You could be busy, absolutely, man. You did see Watchmen though on HBO?
I did. Yep, I loved it.
Me too, man. And I'm really glad that.
I much loved it.
I'm glad that Lindelof's like, no second season. I told my story.
And
that's smart.
Shocked. I was shocked.
I was too.
I have no inside knowledge, so don't judge me. I know nothing. But I when I first came out, and he's like, "Oh, I'm not going to do it." I was like, "Oh, this is a good way to get some more money." They'll throw the bank at him to get him to run the show again. Because there were stories, lines that seemed like he wanted, like he would hint at things that he never got to. And I know there was but like he never got to
Night Owl.
Night Owl. Yeah, he just never got to.
Where's Dan? Exactly. Where the hell's Dan?
Why was he in jail? What was their relationship? And she just sort of hinted at, like, they asked unanswered questions.
Yep. God, Gene Smart was so good as Laurie. Oh my God.
The acting across the board was amazing.
Oh yeah, Regina King is. I mean, she really, like, And I didn't mean to like blow her off because again, it's like that's a given in my world. She is so great in everything she does.
Yes.
Regina King.
Yeah.
She always brings 110%. She is amazing. Even on the damn Boondocks, she is fantastic. So, for me the big pleasant surprise, and I shouldn't have doubted it for a second because I really do love everything that Jean Smart does. I mean, literally from designing women to when she's in Garden State and she's what's his name? Peter Skarsgård, is that his name? The guy who's when she's his boyfriend or his girlfriend earlier, and this May-December romance, and she's fantastic, and it's great too because he's like this awkward Star Trek fan. What's that thing you always say in Klingon, babe? Well, it translates to death to Kirk, but you can appreciate what it is. That's so funny. Yeah, she's amazing.
Jean Smart was a revelation. She was so badass in that. Yeah, she was.
Yeah. And Jeremy Irons was a great Ozymandias.
And the end came. It was one of those movies when it came to. I started nitpicking it. You're just like, oh no, this one. And then like my nitpicks weren't leading anywhere. Like there were answers for all my nitpicks. I called up my buddy Daryl, and and I was like, oh no, they're answers. And I was like, oh my god, it's just a good show. Like I was jealous. You get the jealousy. You're a writer. You're like, fuck you for doing something good.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, it took a ton of risks, and it was faithful to the old material by still being its own thing. It was as experimental as
Oh yes. Oh God, yes. I mean, and that's really like when Gene when Laurie calls John on the Call Dr. Manhattan line. That's amazing. And the Vietnam stuff was amazing. It really got into the world without interfering with the comic book, but the comic book complemented the directions they went into. And like you said, it was its own thing. It was incredibly well done. And again, it's like, I was so glad. I mean, I love the British example of, we only have 6 episodes. We only have 3 episodes. And that's all we're making, this season. Or, that's it. Like my favorite was about Life on Mars, the British version of Life on Mars. And when they were entering their second season, they're like, look, we're not Quantum Leap. The guy's in a coma. It can't last that long. We have to keep it within the context of maybe he's only been in this coma for like a month or maybe 2 months or whatever. It's like we can't stretch reality. And it's like, oh, well, then you don't know American television because it happens every year. So.
But I think you should have so easily just done that show and been like, okay, that was Oklahoma City. Here's what's happening in Los Angeles.
Sure.
Or here's what's happening in Paris. You could be so easy just like.
That's a good point, too. We never did see the rest of the world. That's a very good
so much world to swim around in, and so many other characters to play. Yeah. So, I worship Alan Moore like he's a god, like he worships snakes.
Yeah.
But I read this over the weekend. I thought it was so fascinating. So he did the last Superman story of the
whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow,
the Bronze Age.
One of my absolute favorite stories of all time.
Me too. My favorite Superman story of all time, and one of my favorite comic books of all time. And there's a famous story where the editor was Julie Schwartz. So yeah, of course. It was only one person. He takes Alan Moore out to lunch. It's like you're the only person who can tell this story. And I've always heard that sort of version of it.
Yep.
And you want to be, you're like, that's what I want to be. I want to be in my career where the editor's like, you're the one who can tell the last Superman story. That's like what I'm aiming for. But then, so I read over the weekend. Maybe you already knew this, but he was actually the second choice. Did you know that?
No. Who was the first?
The first choice was the original team. It was Schuster.
No.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, I read this in the
wow.
issue of,
oh my God! Can you imagine if Jerry Siegel got to write a last Superman story?
So they had signed up for it, and they were going to do it. And it was Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster going to draw some parts of it, and it was around some whatever latest Jerry Siegel lawsuit he was putting through, and it fell apart. And that's when they approached Alan Moore, and I was like, wait, so you're telling me the original creators were going to do on it, they had to come off because DC wouldn't honor their contract, and then Alan Moore took it over and did this? I was like, it's like a 1-to-1 ratio of what people are doing to him.
Yeah, yeah. That's sadly true.
I was,
yeah.
and I was. I mean, I have mixed feelings about Watchmen because I feel bad that because Watchmen
everybody does that.
Brilliant, but it's defying my own personal God's will, and I feel bad about that. But then you read stuff like that, and you're like, well, my God has made his own, has done some defying of his own.
I understand. Yeah. Well, and that is a shame because I don't know how many people know. I'm imagining you know, but Siegel came back in the Silver Age in the 50s and 60s and wrote some really exceptional Superman stories of the Silver Age. That wouldn't it be interesting to see what he would come up with if presented with that opportunity?
Oh yeah, I mean he wrote it's like the Death of Superman. Is that the famous one that he wrote?
The imaginary story where Luthor kills him.
Yeah, Luthor kills him. Yeah, so
I didn't remember that. That's fantastic. I know that he did the Lila Laryl where Superman goes back in time and is on Krypton and meets his parents when they're dating.
Yeah,
and that's when he meets Lila Laryl and stuff and falls in love with her. And he even resigns to stay on Krypton and he'll die with his family, with his parents and stuff.
Can you?
And then some ridiculous, thing knocks him out and away from Krypton, so he sees it explode again and he misses his opportunity.
Can you imagine that you're the creator of this thing? You were a huge sensation. You were on the cover of magazines and all that, and then you lost it. And then you go back to this guy because you just got to pay your fucking bills, and you're working for the guy who stole your creation. And it's not, everyone knows this, but Mort Weisinger would just treat his people like shit, right?
Complete asshole.
And including this, so Mort Weisinger is there on the phone or whatever, or in person, yelling at the guy who created this thing and gave him all this wealth and telling him he sucks, and you just got to swallow that up and write it. Like that's fucking. When people read the Silver Age comics, you got to realize that's what's behind this shit. Is there's fucking suffering in these issues.
Even Jack Kirby having to kind of swallow his pride and go back to work for his former assistant.
For Stan Lee, yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. No, I just wrote the introduction to the New Gods Absolute Edition.
Oh wow.
And then I wrote it about that sort of. That because my life. I read the old Stan Lee bio when Tom Spurgeon died. I read his Stan Lee bio, which is amazing.
Oh yeah, you wanted to talk about Tom too. Yeah. Go on.
Tom's death really affected me. I didn't know him at all.
Really? Go on.
I listened to your podcast with him, which I thought was so good.
I love Tom is a good guy. Go on.
I had one. We're talking for 4 hours. If you're still listening, God bless you. I had one interaction with him, and it was insanely negative. I don't mean to talk bad about the dead. This guy is a fucking genius critic of comics and is my entire inspiration. I think I might go to his. I might go up to New York on Thursday too. Anyways, on Friday.
Are they doing a memorial for him?
Yeah, in New York. Yeah, I might go just to see it. But the one interaction I had with I've read him religiously and have read him a long time religiously, and I love his Comics Journal stuff and his current criticism and all.
Oh yeah.
But it was very negative. We had this interaction. He was the one who, like a random blogger had published this thing like, what if Tom King faked his CIA thing?
Oh,
I don't know if you remember that, but
no, not at all. Oh my God.
So this random blogger kind of came up with this theory that I had faked my CIA stuff, and he sent my name into the CIA. He said, "Does Tom King ever work here?" And the CIA says, we don't comment on that. Now, you have to keep in mind that my name is not Tom King. So if you send, my name is Thomas King. So it didn't even send my real fucking name. And so that's number one. Number two, I actually did work for the CIA. It actually is true. It really happened.
Yeah.
And like my wife was there, and I remember going to Iraq and Pakistan, Afghan, and
Jesus.
And so this was coming out, and it started on Twitter, and people were like, and it was like one of those things, like, are you a fake? And it's hard to prove. It's one of those things. I mean, DC.
Well, sure.
DC knows it's true because DC can call up, as my employer, they can do this, and they've done it.
Right.
A random person can't randomly act, but an employer can do that. And also, like, I had Sheriff of Babylon had to get approved by the CIA, so I had a bunch of emailing that.
Right.
But I don't have like because I was undercover. I don't have documents. I mean, I have like letters my wife wrote me, and so anyway, so this little blog is, and Tom puts it on his blog. He reposts it.
Oh, jeez.
And he reaches out to me. He's like, "Do you have a comment on this?" I was like, "Yeah, it's not true." It's like, and I start texting him all these pictures. I took him pictures of like medals I had won and things I had brought back. And I took and then I had pictures of me overseas, with guns and fucking shit. I have pictures, and I forwarded him the emails from CIA being like, "You were there." And all this stuff, I was like desperate to show him, and he would not be convinced. He's like, "This all could be fake." And I was like, "No."
Oh, Jesus. Weird.
And I was begging him, and then eventually it blew over because I posted some stuff on Twitter. I posted like these emails from the CIA, and everyone's like, "Oh, this is all fake." And then days later, I noticed that Tom was still sort of promoting this on his blog, and I texted him. I was like, "Hey, man, can you just take that down?" I was probably not the nicest thing, but it's going to annoy me. And he's like, "They're not saying that you weren't in the CIA. They're just saying that, we have to ask that question." I was like, "Oh, no, that's not how the world works."
No, that's not cool. Well, that's disappointing.
No, but I feel like I'm telling a negative story about him. But
no. Well,
then I saw him at the Ringos, and he came up to me. He was accepting an award for somebody else, and Mitch and I were presenting the awards. And I'd never seen him in person, and I'd had this. And by the way, I was in my text. I was like, "Dude, I love your writing. I love everything you do. Please just." I just like, don't spoil this for me. And I saw him, and then we talked for about literally the 4 seconds you shake someone's hand to congratulate them. And it was all fell apart. All that sort of negativity.
Oh, good.
He's just like, "Dude, we have to talk. We have to sit down and have a conversation." I was like, "Absolutely." And it was like, all just fell apart. And then he died a week later. We never got to sit down and have.
Oh, wow. It was the last Ringos. Oh, my God.
Yeah. And,
at New York. Holy shit.
And I just feel like I would, and so after that, I almost became in my own sort of OCD way. Like I read his, We Told You So book, and I read his Stan Lee book, and I went back and there's just some not closure to the whole thing, and I'm so inspired by because I know he'd hate everything I write because I'm super mainstream.
Oh, I don't believe that. He liked mainstream stuff. Come on. Now, I mean, I understand, and he didn't like the shitty mainstream stuff.
Yeah, but look, I read old issues of Comics Journal full in the knowledge that they would despise everything I do. But I still, I read, I was like, "Oh my God, they're taking down the first Star Wars movie. I got to read this article."
Yeah, but that was as much Gary, wasn't it Gary? Yeah, Gary. It was Gary's. Gary Groth and everything. Or Groth. I'm not sure how to say his last name, but yeah, man. I mean, that's I understand what you're saying, and certainly Tom liked to talk about foreign comics and indie comics and things like that. But he'd have Brian on it. God, he had Brian and Matt at his expo in Columbus.
Yeah, and he talked to Scott, and he talked a lot. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that's true. He did talk to Scott Snyder. So yeah, I mean, so yeah, man. I don't know.
It's possible, but I still, I'm so inspired by sort of his vision of what comics could be. And his death really shook me in the fact that I was like, okay, I gotta fucking live up to someone who thinks comics can be that good. There's something like
I know what you mean.
I just I feel like that conversation we didn't have, I missed out on some insight. I'm kind of reaching for it now. So.
No, I can appreciate that, man. And no, I believe me, it hit me too because I know him a little bit better, and I would see him at conventions, and we had a few great conversations on the record and off the record, and and truly, anytime he would promote one of the Word Balloon interviews, it would blow my mind. And I'm like, "Oh, Tom, thanks so much." And he was like, "No, you're good at what you do, man." And I'm like, that meant a lot because, again, like you said, I've certainly admired his work for many more years than when I was doing my bullshit. And I mean, we really lost one of the best advocates of comics that could talk about it in an intelligent way, and also see through the bullshit. And I mean, really, Tom was a legitimate comic book journalist. I mean, he would cover the news aspect of comics and be tenacious about it and get answers. And I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, I am, I always say my show's an entertainment show, and I like everybody that's on because that's just. I want to put out a positive message. And Tom would also, like I said, cover the not nice stories about comics as well and do it quite well and really give you the straight shit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, he was great. No, and Wow, I didn't realize that this memorial was coming up in New York. That's good. I'm glad. There's never enough. I mean, I hope that they shouldn't rename one of the comic journalism awards as the Spurgeon Award. I mean, they really should consider that.
Oh, yeah, that would be a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I really think he's that kind of significant guy that people should continue to read his stuff. I'm really glad that the Comics Reporter is still up, his blog and all the posts and everything, and I hope that it stays up, forever. And I understand that with the Internet Wayback Machine, you could probably read old stuff if it ever was taken down or not. But yeah, he was amazing. Yeah, he was terrific. He was very cool. So, well, yeah, we are at 3 hours, but yeah, I mean, if you're done, like I said, you're the one that it's an hour later, man. I mean, I'm going to be up dancing until.
Yeah, no, I probably should go so I can write these whatever pages I have to write tomorrow.
Well, my man, always a pleasure, and I'm very excited about what's coming up in the immediate future that we do know about, like Batcat and of course Strange Adventures. Thank you for letting me see it. I am blown away. And very excited about the ride that you Mitch, and Doc are going to put us on for this book. Like I said, longtime Adam Strange fan. So anytime somebody's writing an exceptional Adam Strange, I'm there, and you guys are doing it.
If you are listening to this, and you please go out and get it, because Mr. Miracle and Sheriff, the two books I've done with Mitch before, they all sold out in the first issue. So get to your comic book store that day. And then sell them on eBay the next day, and then buy 2 copies of the second.
And when's
March 4th.
March 4th, very cool.
Man, if you want a copy.
So yeah, plenty of time still to order Strange Adventures. From Mitch Garrett's, Doc Shaner, and Tom King.
Yeah. So don't have to get a $30 copy of Mr. Miracle 1 on eBay like you do now. You can get your own for.
That's insane, but in a good way. That's good. So, no, as always, buddy, thank you, and always a good conversation. Thanks for
you rock, John. You're the best. And thank you to the Word Balloon listeners. Be a Patreon subscriber. I'm a Patreon subscriber. And, it's worth it.
Thank you, League member.
Damn right.
There you go. Of course, Strange Adventures, as I said, is coming up in March. And looking forward to Batman Catwoman when Clayman says it's ready. And more projects from Tom King in the near future. Always good to talk to Tom and catch up with him. And I know he'll be at C2E2 at the end of February. And as I've mentioned, I'm looking forward to doing the C2E2 convention because I've got 2 panels on the show. I'll be talking to Sven Gulli. Really excited about that. The great Rich Coase, the wonderful horror television host, doing his panel. And then also I'm doing a spotlight panel with Jimmy Palmiani and Amanda Connor. Really excited about that as well. I love those guys. And I've been, good acquaintances with them for years now. And always happy to talk to them. And I love their ideas and, just their enthusiasm about the comic book business. So some great panels. I look forward to seeing everybody at C2E2. If you're coming out there, make sure you say hello to me. And looking forward to the convention and all the other conventions in 2020 this year. Thanks a lot for listening to today's Word Balloon, brought to you again by the League of Word Balloon listeners. WordBalloon.com. Go to the Patreon ad right there on the front page. It'll take you to my Patreon page, or patreon.com/wordballoon. But thank you, as always, for your great support, League of Word Balloon listeners. Word Balloon also sponsored by Aftershock Comics. There are great books at Aftershock. You know them. You love them. They are established favorites. Things like Animosity from Marguerite Bennett and Raphael de la Tour, and A Walk Through Hell from Garth Ennis and Goran Sudzuka. Books like Baby Teeth with Donny Cates and Gary Brown. There's Dark Art from Cullen Bunn and Juan Doe, and Dark Red from Tim Seeley. And, of course, new books coming up, like The Man Who Effed Up Time from John Layman, and Undone by Blood by Zach Thompson, and God Killers from Mark Sable. All new books coming later in the weeks ahead. You're going to love them. And they've all got the Aftershock logo on them. And they are great representations of the kind of books you'll find at Aftershock Comics. Go to their website. You'll find full story descriptions, preview art pages, and the diamond codes on how to order these books for yourself through your local shop at AftershockComics.com. Thanks again for listening today. Great stuff coming up in February. Really excited. I already got stuff in the can that I can't wait to share with you in the days ahead as we continue 2020. It's a countdown to Word Balloon's 15th anniversary. That's right, May 10th of 2005 is when I started. So on May 10th, it'll be 15 years hard, and I can't believe it. and I appreciate you being on the journey with me and enjoying these conversations. More great stuff coming up. I can't wait to share with you. So until next time, have a great weekend. Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions, copyright 2020.